Chapter 783. Shing. As soon as the draining spirit spear appeared, it immediately released a powerful, sharp light. Chu Hen pointed the spearhead at the huge phantom in front of him. His eyes were piercingly cold as he taunted with a frivolous posture. Anger, hatred, and boundless killing intent filled the sky, causing the entire water realm to sink into a violent ripple. The huge scarlet-red figure was like a demonic god. It looked down at Chu Hen from high above. Following that, it raised the trident in its hand high up. Endless scarlet light patterns started to circulate on the huge trident. You asked for it. Today, I will let you see the true power of the great demon slayer technique. The rough sound was like thunder piercing the ears, causing the blood of those who heard it to churn. In the sky, thunder clouds were densely packed, and peerlessly powerful lightning interweaved like snakes. Everyone present suddenly felt as if a mountain was pressing down on them. All the people of Mount Kunliu had a serious and nervous expression. Junior Marshal Brother Chu Hen, don't forcefully resist the great Demon Slayer technique. A disciple of the Demon Slayer Hall could not help but exclaim. As soon as he finished speaking, the boundless illusory figure suddenly exploded with an unprecedented ferocious aura. The huge halberd that was like it was used by a god, with the power to split the heavens and split the earth, slashed towards Chu Hen below. It's too late. Turn into ashes. The aura shook the mountains and rivers, shaking the surroundings. The huge scarlet-red halberd was like a divine pillar that fell from the sky. The airflow between the heavens and the earth became abnormally chaotic, and the entire space shook uneasily. The incomparably strong astral wind was like a torrent that crushed down towards Chu Hen. The water below, because of his frightening pressure, deeply caved in. At this moment, Chu Hen was in the middle of a torrent of hurricanes. He was like a butterfly caught in a storm. Looking at the destructive halberd, Chu Hen's eyes flickered with sparks. Buzz, buzz. At the same time, Chu Hen's body was covered in black light, and the draining spirit spear in his hand let out a loud and fierce beast cry. Roar! An icy cold and dark aura spread out, and a fierce aura soared into the sky. Under the shocked gazes of everyone present, a peerlessly domineering and ferocious ancient lizard had actually appeared in the sky behind Chu Hen. It had sharp claws and tough scales, but unlike ordinary giant lizards, it had a pair of huge bat wings on its back. Subsequently, Chu Hen's arm pushed out, and the draining god spear in his hand stabbed diagonally towards the sky. Boom! At the same time, the airwaves trembled, and a powerful ice-cold spear light beam burst out, directly facing the giant halberd that was falling down. The crimson halberd and the black spear were like two divine rainbows descending from the sky, one above and one below, clashing head-on. Bang! Boom! Earth-shattering and heaven-shaking. Divine lightning fused together. At the moment when the two collided, the entire sky darkened. Red and black light patterns spread out wantonly, and layers of surging waves spread out one after another. The water below stirred up monstrous waves, and the surrounding people of Mount Kunliu and the blood-refining hall were shaken by the violent aftermath. He actually blocked it? How could it be? Looking at the young figure who was still as firm as a rock under the storm-like power, everyone in Mount Kunliu, with surprised Gao Lang and Lu Fu of the blood-refining hall, couldn't help but look at each other. The former narrowed his eyes and spat out a few words coldly. It's that weapon. The fierce shock waves kept colliding towards Chu Hen and Nangong Hao. However, in the next second, Chu Hen moved and rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, a sharp light appeared in Chu Hen's body again. He carried the draining god spear in his right hand, and then raised his left hand forward. Swoosh! In an instant, a green long sword suddenly shot out like a beam of flowing light that traveled back thousands of years. It tore through the air and rushed towards the huge shadow in front. Blue ran sword. The people of Mount Kunliu and the blood-refining hall raised their eyelids, and their expressions changed. In just a blink of an eye, the beam of bright green light directly pierced through the chest of the huge shadow. The huge shadow shook violently, and then the place that was pierced by the blue Rand's sword emitted a dazzling white light. The white light quickly expanded and burst subsequently. With a loud bang, the shadow that was comparable to a fiend god exploded from the middle, turning into light fragments that filled the sky. Among the flying crimson light, a young figure with a gloomy face was slightly embarrassed. His eyes were so angry that they were almost spitting fire. "This is your grand demon slayer technique? Looks like you didn't practice it well." A mocking smile appeared on the corner of Chu Hen's mouth. He immediately turned into a beam of flowing light in the sky, and the long body of the dripping god spear was pointed straight at his opponent's throat. "It's over." Senior brother Nangong. The sharp sound of wind piercing was unusually ear-piercing. Nangong Bai's expression changed drastically, and in a hurry, he raised his hand and struck out with his palm. Demon Slayer Palm. Bang! The palm force that was surging with true origin energy poured down, and it met the piercing cold spear. The moment the two collided, Nangong Bai's palm force was like tofu dregs, and it shattered into pieces. However, Nangong Bai's reaction speed was extremely fast, and he immediately used the counterforce to retreat. The distance between the two of them increased rapidly. Although Nangong Bai successfully blocked the fatal blow, the terrifying sharpness of the dripping god spear still caused a bloody hole to appear in his palm. Seeing that Nangong Bai was at a disadvantage, the blood-refining hull did not dare to drag on any longer. "Go and help Nangong Bai. I'll take care of this group of defeated soldiers," Gao Lang said to Lu Fu, who was beside him, in a low voice. Lu Fu smiled coldly. "That's exactly what I intend to do." Whoosh! As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Fu immediately turned into a remnant shadow and dashed out. Her speed was extremely fast, and her figure was like a ghost. The remnant shadow that she turned into split into two, and it was as if there were two shadow blades approaching menacingly. "Nangong Bai, you've disappointed us," Lu Fu said in a mocking tone. Nangong Bai's eyes darkened, and he shouted angrily, "Stop talking nonsense. Kill him now." Nangong Bai's hatred towards Chu Hen could be said to have multiplied over time. In the beginning, Nangong Bai did not intend to reveal his true identity so early. His target was the position of Mount Kunliu. This was also what the blood-refining hall hoped to see the most. The step-by-step plan was realized quietly. Nangong Bai could be said to be advancing step by step in Mount Kunliu. He was not worried that Lung Lingyan would compete with him for the position of sect master. Her talent and ability were indeed very strong, but after all, she was a woman. In terms of election advantages, Nangong Bai was obviously a little bit better. However, who would have thought that Chu Hen would come out of nowhere and directly disrupt all the plans of Nangong Bai and the blood-refining hall? The strength that Chu Hen gradually revealed constantly made Nangong Bai feel greatly threatened, especially when he knew that Chu Hen had killed the demonic beast of death. Nangong Bai finally could not hide anymore. He also knew that the position of sect master was getting farther and farther away from him. Therefore, he might as well go all the way and eliminate all the elite disciples of Mount Kunliu. As long as all the experts of Mount Kunliu who came to the ancient Baron's Heaven Realm were killed here, how could Mount Kunliu, which was only guarded by the Void Temple Master, resist the attack of the blood-refining hall? After leaving the ancient Baron's Heaven Realm and the blood-refining hall conquered Mount Kunliu, he could still become the sect master. A sinister smile appeared on Nangong Bai's face. Now, after slaughtering the 300 elite disciples, he would pretend to be a defeated soldier and sneak back to Fish Stream. Then, he would cooperate with the people of the blood-refining hall. Then, his mission of hiding in Mount Kunliu for more than 10 years would be successfully completed. However, before that, he had to first get rid of this hateful bastard in front of him. As soon as they saw Lu Fu and Nangong Bai besieging Chu Hen, the people of Mount Kunliu could not help but be furious. "Junior brother Chu Hen, let's help you." Su Lang and Ling Tao stood up with their swords in their hands, and a strong aura burst out. However, before the two of them could make a move, Gao Lang sneered disdainfully. You better take care of yourselves first. If nothing unexpected happens, you will all die before him. Ta. Then, Gao Lang put his palms together and made a strange gesture. A strong force surged out from his body, and the water below immediately surged up to the sky. Stone tribulation, great disaster boundary. Rumble. The next moment, the earth shook and huge waves surged up to the sky. The waters below rapidly split apart, forming huge ravines and layers of water curtains. Following that, huge rock barriers rose from the waters in all directions, looking like huge stone bowls. In an instant, all the disciples of Mount Kunliu were surrounded by this huge stone bowl. The stone wall was more than 200 meters high and more than 2,000 meters in diameter. It directly enveloped the broken dam bridge and a large area of water on both sides. The only way out was to fly out from the sky. However, this thought was quickly extinguished. Numerous sharp and cold figures flew over from the horizon behind the stone wall barrier. They surrounded them from all sides, and like a flock of eagles, they completely sealed off all paths of retreat for the people of Mount Kunliu. Facing such an impenetrable siege from all sides, the people of Mount Kunliu clenched their fists and gritted their teeth. In this situation, no one could escape. Obviously, the blood-refining hall intended to kill all of them. Thank you for coming. Then, Gao Lang spread his arms and laughed proudly. Then let the massacre begin. Kill. A chaotic battle broke out once again. Many experts of the blood-refining hall who were hiding in the surroundings began to pounce on the people of Mount Kunliu. Even so, the people of Mount Kunliu had no intention of surrendering. Chapter 784. Boom! The intense battle continued unabated. A gigantic stone barrier that spanned across 2,000 meters of water trapped all the disciples of Mount Kunliu within it. Colorful airwaves and light patterns splashed and intersected in the sky. The sky changed color, the wind blew, and the clouds surged. The mighty power rippled, making the entire space seem like it was caught in a storm. In fact, the blood-refining hall did not send all their disciples to the battle. Some of them were waiting in the area between the dam and fish stream. What they needed to do was to wait there and kill any fish that slipped through the net that might escape from the dam area. This was a very important part of the blood-refining hall. The reason was simple. They could not let any information about Nangong Bai leak out. As long as all the disciples of Mount Kunliu were killed, Nangong Bai could still return to Fish Stream and enter the interior of Mount Kunliu again to coordinate with them from the inside. Nangong Bai was the most trusted person of Wen Liang, the leader of Demon Slaying Hall. Finally, they could coordinate with them from the inside. The result was unimaginable. Therefore, it could be said that the blood-refining hall blocked all the evacuation routes of the people from Mount Kunliu in 3 layers. Even so, the people of Mount Kunliu were still losing ground. It was only a matter of time before they were completely annihilated. Boom! In the air, Chu Hen fought against Nangong Bai and Lu Fu alone. Perhaps in the eyes of others, it was a very strenuous task. However, in reality, it was the opposite. Chu Hen fought against the two with ease. He attacked more than he defended. The draining god spear in his hand was good at both attacking and defending. It was flexible and powerful. Bang! Nangong Bai could no longer defend against Chu Hen's attack. He was once again pushed away by Chu Hen's spear, and a bloody wound appeared on his left shoulder. His anger and impatience made him lose his usual calmness. He shouted at Lu Fu, "What are you doing? Kill him now." Lu Fu frowned discontentedly. In fact, she was not stalling for time. Every move she made was full of killing intent. Even so, it was difficult for her to defeat Chu Hen in a short time. You do have some skills. Try this move of mine." A cold glint flashed in Lu Fu's eyes. Soon after, she transformed into an afterimage as she flew forward. When she was less than 20 meters away from Chu Hen, Lu Fu swiftly made her move. A dozen or so afterimages immediately separated from her body. More than a dozen phantoms were in different postures, each holding a shadow blade, surrounding Chu Hen from top to bottom. Such a scene was dazzling to the eyes. Everlasting phantom. Along with the cold voice, the dozen or so phantoms that were scattered around the area rushed toward Chu Hen at the same time. The rapid sounds of wind being cut were like the sound of shadow blades cutting through the air. However, at this moment, with Chu Hen as the center, two kinds of yin and yang qi, one black and one white, surged rapidly between heaven and earth. Yin and yang qi chased each other, immediately forming a Tai Chi yin-yang pattern under his feet. The Tai Chi yin-yang diagram spread out and instantly reached Nan Gongbai's feet, who was dozens of meters away. In that instant, the space faintly distorted, as if he had fallen into an illusion. Before Nan Gongji could even react, a strong pulling force was pulling his body at a rapid speed. Greater teleportation technique. Chu Hen secretly shouted. Buzz. At this moment, Chu Hen and Nan Gongbai were like two black and white dots in the Tai Chi yin-yang pattern, chasing each other as the space they were in immediately changed. In the next second, Nan Gongbai was surrounded and attacked by more than a dozen phantoms. It's me. Nan Gongbai's pupils shrank as he shouted in panic. The sudden change also caused Lu Fu to be shocked. In a moment of panic, she quickly retracted her attacks, and a dozen or so shadows with shadow blades in their hands shot back when they were only a few centimeters away from Nan Gongju. That was close. Nan Gongbai was so frightened that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He had almost died in the hands of his own people. However, before he could heave a sigh of relief, a disdainful voice rang in his ears. You've relaxed too early, Nangong. Senior brother. What? Nan Gongbai's expression changed drastically. Before he could react, a heavy cold spear swept toward him and ruthlessly smashed into his back. Bang! Dust flew in the air as a shockwave spread out. Nan Gongbai felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. His body shook violently, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Lu Fu, who could only help him, had just withdrawn her attack. She had used up all her energy, but she had not recovered yet. She could not stop Chu Hen in an instant, and could only watch helplessly from the side. The huge impact caused Nan Gongbai to leap forward. However, in the next second, Chu Hen waved the draining god spear and spun it 360 degrees. The spear circled in front of Nan Gongbai, and with a bang, the spear, which was emitting a dense black glow, once again ruthlessly swept across Nan Gongbai's abdomen. Hua! Nan Gongbai spat out another mouthful of blood. His body arched like a lobster, and he quickly retreated. Even though Nan Gongbai had suffered 2 heavy blows from Chu Hen, he did not lose the ability to fight because he had the protection of the Great Devil Slayer technique. At the same time, Lu Fu, who had regained her composure, once again pounced toward Chu Hen's back, leaving behind a series of afterimages. Die! Oomph! Chu Hen smiled disdainfully. He turned around and thrust his spear back. The draining god spear, which was surrounded by a powerful black glow, emitted a loud whistling sound. Following that, a huge, sharp, black claw actually reached out from the glowing ripples at the tip of the spear. The ancient lizard dragon's sharp claws met the afterimage head-on with a boom. A piercingly cold gale burst like a balloon, and the afterimage was immediately sent flying. Soon after, it turned into Lu Fu's slightly battered figure. This guy? Gao Lang, who had killed 2 Mount Kunliu's disciples with a single palm strike, stared coldly at the battle in the sky with a gloomy gaze. He really did not expect Nan Gongbai and Lu Fu to be unable to take down a mere Chu Hen. If this continued, the two of them might be killed by Chu Hen instead. Then I'll deal with you first. Immediately, Gao Lang did not care about his reputation anymore. He immediately retreated from the chaotic battle between Mount Kunliu and the blood-refining hall, and rushed toward Chu Hen. Stop right there. Su Lang saw through Gao Lang's intention and hurriedly raised his sword to block him. In the eyes of the people from Mount Kunliu, Chu Hen was already under great pressure when he fought against 2 people alone. Now that he had to fight against 3 people alone, there was absolutely no way he could survive. Xing! The long sword in Su Lang's hand let out a long, soft sound, and a triangular sword beam slashed toward Gao Lang. Gao Lang sneered and retaliated with a palm strike. Trash, stay away from me. Buzz. In an instant, a dark golden palm print shot out, and an impact force that was comparable to a torrent came crashing down. At the same time that Su Lang's sword pillar's airwaves were crushed, the treasured sword in his hand was also shaken to the point it flew out of his hand. Following that, Gao Lang struck out with his palm once again, and the surging shockwave landed on Su Lang's body. The latter felt his internal organs shift, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body fell straight toward the water below, and with a splash, thousands of water splashed. Su Lang, Ling Tao, who was fighting with all his might, was shocked and angry. He saw Su Lang lying unconscious in the rolling waves, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Oof. How dare an ant compete with the sun and the moon? Gao Lang sneered disdainfully, and then flashed to the battle between Chu Hen, Nangong Bai, and Lu Fu. He stretched out one hand, and with a clench of his palm, a majestic aura that could topple mountains and overturn seas gushed out. Gravitational space. Hum! The void trembled, and a strange force pounced toward Chu Hen. In the next instant, dark golden particles of light appeared in the space around Chu Hen. These particles of light were like dust particles floating in the air, and they caused one's vision to turn dim yellow. At the same time, Chu Hen suddenly felt an extremely powerful pressure enveloping his body. This invisible pressure was like gravity that had been magnified hundreds or thousands of times, and Chu Hen's movements clearly became slower. On the other hand, Nangong Bai and Lu Fu were not affected in the slightest. You can die without regrets now that the three of us are fighting together. Gao Lang sneered as he launched his attack. No matter if it was Gao Lang, Lu Fu, or Nangong Quan, they were all people with hearts higher than the heavens. If it was any other time, it would be impossible for the three of them to gang up on a single person, especially since Chu Hen was younger than them in terms of experience and age. However, at this moment, Chu Hen was challenging three famous geniuses with just a spear. Chu Hen, taking on three people on his own, caused the pressure on the people from Mount Kunliu to lessen significantly. During the chaotic battle, the bridge behind the people from Mount Kunliu had already been split into two, and there was still a broken section of the bridge on the other side. On a huge rock on the wall, two medical disciples were frantically trying to save Lung Lingyan. Lung Lingyan's face was pale, and her dress was stained red with blood. Her aura was extremely weak. At this moment, her long eyelashes fluttered lightly, and she slowly opened her eyes. There was a dazed look in her beautiful eyes. You're awake, you're awake. Senior Sister Lingyan, you're finally awake. The two medical disciples' tightly furrowed brows immediately relaxed. Under such circumstances, Lung Lingyan's awakening did not seem to have any effect on the overall situation. The chaotic scene quickly appeared in front of Lung Lingyan, and she immediately recalled what had happened before she fainted. What was going on? Logically speaking, the people from Mount Kunliu should have been wiped out a long time ago. Why were they still able to hold on for so long? What's going on? Where's Chu Hen? Lung Lingyan asked weakly. Over there, one of the medical disciples hurriedly pointed into the air. Senior Sister Lingyan, you don't know this, but junior brother Chu Hen almost killed that traitor Nangong by just now. Lung Lingyan's delicate body trembled slightly, and her lily-white hands clenched tightly. The scene in front of her was something that she could never have imagined. Chapter 785. Senior Sister Lingyan, you don't know, but junior brother Chu Hen almost killed that traitor Nangong Xian just now. The medical disciple beside her clenched his fists tightly as he spoke with righteous indignation. There was a hint of pity in his tone. Lung Lingyan's pale face changed again and again. She looked at the young figure in the sky who was fighting one against three, and her gentle and beautiful eyes were filled with many complicated emotions. How could this be? Nangong Hao, Gao Lang, and Lu Fu were all at the 5th level of the Earth Profound Realm. Judging from the aura that Chu Hen was emitting, he was only at the 4th level of the Earth Profound Realm at most. This was no ordinary fighting against someone with a higher cultivation level. Chu Hen was too reckless. Long Lingyan shook her head helplessly. Since Chu Hen was so strong, he should have used all his strength to fight his way out of the encirclement and return to Fish Stream to inform the Devil Slayer Palace Master to be on guard. However, Chu Hen chose the simplest and most direct method to fight against 3 people on his own. Was he really confident? Lung Lingyan stared at the 4 people who were fighting. Chu Hen held the dripping god-dragon spine spear in his hand. The magnificent scene was like a dragon fighting against 3 pythons. Boom. Bang. The battle between the 4 people caused chaos in the sky. All kinds of surging energy waves surged out. Under the influence of Gao Lang's gravitational space, Chu Hen had to endure a gravity that was hundreds of times stronger than normal. His movements were clearly slower than before. Although his hands and feet were tied, Chu Hen did not show any obvious signs of defeat because of this. Heh, you're already at this stage. Why don't you just surrender and I'll leave your corpse intact? Gao Lang smiled coldly. While Chu Hen was fighting against Lu Fu, he quickly launched a fierce attack from behind. Sky-breaking fist. Buzz, layers of thick, dark golden light covered Gao Lang's fist. His opponent's arm suddenly looked like it was made of copper, and it exploded with a force that could break thousands of kilograms. Chu Hen's eyes turned cold. He turned around and thrust his spear back. The draining god spear, which was surrounded by a black cyclone, collided with the opponent's golden fist. Bang! Scattered true essence flew out, and a heavy force exploded outwards. Chu Hen borrowed this shockwave to quickly retreat. I can surrender without a fight, but I'll trade the lives of the 3 of you. Chu Hen replied coldly. You're courting death. As soon as he finished speaking, Gao Lang suddenly stretched out his arms. 2 powerful auras spread out from his palms at the same time. Buzz. In the next moment, thick yellow sand rose on both sides of Chu Hen. The dusky yellow sand was like dust filling the sky. Following that, the space twisted and swayed, and 2 huge rocks that were dozens of meters tall appeared on either side of Chu Hen. Gao Lang retracted his palms once more and said angrily in a deep voice, "Close." Whoosh. Along with the overlapping sounds of rapid air waves, the 2 rocks rapidly flew towards Chu Hen, who was in the middle. There was an air of wanting to shatter Chu Hen's body into pieces. Chu Hen's eyebrows slightly furrowed. He immediately used the Alcade body technique, and with his fastest speed, he turned into a silver arc of light and flashed forward. Boom! The 2 huge rocks heavily collided with each other and shattered in the air. Dodging the pincer attack of the 2 rocks, a dozen or so blurry afterimages appeared in all directions of Chu Hen like ghosts. An ice-cold and sharp murderous aura swept over. More than a dozen afterimages simultaneously transformed into flowing light shadow blades, which were directly named after him. Gao Lang and Lu Fu's cooperation was smooth, and they didn't give Chu Hen any way out. However, just as the flowing light blades were about to reach him, Chu Hen flipped his left palm, and a dozen or so dazzling green lights flew out. Like a divine rainbow after the rain, they intercepted the flowing light blades. Bang! Boom! The powerful and piercingly cold sword aura shook the surroundings, and the flowing light blades were pierced through by the green sword aura. Soon after, the green sword aura flowed in the air, and then converged together to form a dazzling holy sword. The blue sky soared again. It seems that you only know these few moves. A thunder-like furious voice came from above Chu Hen's head. What followed closely was the unique, ruthless killing intent that originated from the great demon slaying technique. The hearts of everyone present were all startled. Chu Hen raised his cold eyes slightly and saw Nangong by charging down from above. His entire body was surging with an incomparably powerful scarlet light, and his fierce eyes were like those of a wild beast. Buzz! Buzz! Along with the rapid and terrifying energy fluctuations, Nangong Bai's palm intersected with scarlet light, and a thick halberd appeared in his hand. The halberd was covered in a scorching scarlet vortex, and its power was shocking and unstoppable. You can't escape. Ha ha ha! The sinister smile on Nangong Bai's face was especially sinister. He was extremely fast, and instantly appeared in front of Chu Hen, the halberd in his hand thrusting towards his opponent's heart with the force of lightning. Die! Hiss! An incomparably dazzling light blossomed in the sky, and a scarlet rain of blood danced in the air. Everyone below instantly widened their eyes, and shock appeared on their faces. Lung Lingyan's beautiful eyes widened, and her hands involuntarily clenched into fists. Her lightly pursed lips trembled slightly, filled with surprise and shock. The flow of time seemed to have slowed down. The intense pain that originated from his chest spread to every nerve in his body. The smile on Nangong Bai's face had long since frozen, and was replaced by thick disbelief. The scene that appeared in front of everyone caught them off guard. Chu Hen stood proudly in the air like a boulder, and the draining spirit spear in his hand stabbed upwards. The ice-cold spear tip had already been sent out and directly pierced through Nangong Bai's chest. Meanwhile, the halberd in Nangong Bai's hand stabbed the air beside Chu Hen's left shoulder. How is this possible? Nangong Bai's eyes widened, and fresh blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His pupils violently shrank, and all he saw was a pair of bewitching purple eyes on Chu Hen's handsome face. Within those purple eyes, four black dots slowly rotated in a clockwise direction, like an infinite universe. They could not be seen through, could not be grasped, and the only signal they sent out was destruction. It's an illusion. Nangong Bai's body trembled, and like a salted fish, he was propped up by the spear in Chu Hen's hand. Chu Hen looked at his opponent, and the corners of his mouth curled into a frivolous smile. Correct. The ice-cold spear was pulled out, and Nangong Bai's body instantly became like a dying bird that had lost its support, and a scarlet bloody hole appeared in his chest. Gao Lang and Lu Fu's expressions darkened, and in that split second of shock, Gao Lang did not say a word, and charged in front of Chu Hen as fast as he could, his hands continuously forming a series of hand seals. Infinite super gravity. Buzz. A dark golden light enveloped Chu Hen's entire body like a raging wave, and an even more astonishing gravitational force came crashing down on him. The inner energy in Gao Lang's body was rapidly depleting, and the gravitational force that Chu Hen had to endure increased exponentially, as if he was stuck in a quagmire. I never thought that you would be able to force us to such a state. At that moment, Gao Lang's face was filled with caution and murderous intent that had never appeared before. After personally witnessing Chu Hen thrust the draining god spear into Nangong Bai's chest, Gao Lang no longer held back. This infinite gravity technique could continuously increase the gravitational force of the Earth, and it only ended after exhausting the last bit of inner energy in his body. Thank you for the compliment. Chu Hen smiled indifferently, and the draining god spear shot out, creating a piercingly cold wave of air as it pierced towards Nangong Bai's throat. Gao Lang's eyes narrowed, and he reached out with his right hand to meet the tip of the spear. However, just as the sharp tip of the spear was about to collide with his palm, Gao Lang suddenly flipped his palm over, and his arm moved as fast as lightning around the tip of the spear and firmly grasped the spear's body. Gao Lang's arm shone with a dark luster, as if it was made of molten copper. He held the draining god's spear tightly, and Chu Hen was unable to move. A cold and sinister smile blossomed on his face. Looks like you won't be able to escape from me in the end. I'm sorry to tell you that today's battle has come to an end. Lu Fu. Gao Lang shouted loudly. I've been waiting for a long time. Lu Fu shouted coldly. In the next moment, an endless darkness began to spread towards Chu Hen, and the entire sky darkened. Lu Fu's figure moved, and a series of cold and sharp black shadows flashed across the sky. In an instant, nearly 100 cold shadows appeared in the sky. Not good. Chu Hen is in danger. The appearance of this scene immediately caused the people of Mount Kunliu to turn pale with fright. Lung Lingyan frowned, and she subconsciously stood up. She wanted to go and help, but the injury in her body caused her a sharp pain, and she almost fainted again. A matter of life and death. His momentum was like thunder. An endless murderous aura filled the air. However, Chu Hen smiled, and he turned a blind eye to the nearly 100 shadows that were charging towards him. His eyelids suddenly lifted, and he stared at Gao Lang in front of him with extreme disdain. I believe that no one has ever told you not to touch your opponent's weapon. The indifferent voice was like a sharp knife that pierced Gao Lang's eardrums. The latter's heart suddenly trembled, and his pupils shrank violently. A thick aura of danger instantly assaulted him. Soon, accompanied by a sharp sound, the draining divine dragon's pine spear in Chu Hen's hand suddenly erupted with a different kind of dazzling silver light. Everyone was shocked, and Gao Lang hurriedly loosened his grip. But in the next second, the sound of a sharp weapon slicing through flesh rang out in the sky. A series of blood splattered in the air. Gao Lang's face immediately turned pale, and endless pain spread throughout his body. Half of his palm was neatly cut off. In an instant, everyone's hearts were in turmoil, and their minds felt like they had been struck by lightning. They saw that the draining divine spear in Chu Hen's hand had disappeared, and in its place was a light silver blade that was as straight as a sword. The silver blade was shining brightly, as if it had been tempered in the essence of the 9 heavenly stars, and emitted an unparalleled sharpness. Fear, anger, and resentment were written all over Gao Lang's face. In his shock and anger, he did not care about his injuries and hurriedly retreated. Right now, it was more important to save his life. Chu Hen faintly shook his head. Have a safe trip? I won't send you off. Swoosh! In the next moment, a green sword shadow appeared out of nowhere, streaked across the sky, and swiftly slashed towards Gao Lang. No, bang! Chapter 786. Bang! Looking at the shocking scene of blood flying above the void, all the disciples of Mount Kunliu and Blood Refining Hall widened their eyes and fell into deep shock. How could it be? If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would believe it was true. In a split second, Chu Hen stabbed Nangong Bai with his spear and killed Gao Lang. 1 against 3, he defeated 2 in a row in an instant. How dare you kill him? I'm going to tear you into pieces. Voices full of shock and anger came from all directions. Numerous shadows tore through the air and slashed at Chu Hen. However, as soon as Gao Lang died, the gravitational space immediately collapsed. It was as if Chu Hen had unloaded a heavy burden of 10,000 kilograms in an instant. The feeling of relaxation that came with that instant greatly increased his sharpness. He waved the TNI blade, and a bright blade aura, like a lightning flowing shadow, welcomed the ice-cold shadow blade. Bang! Sparks flew everywhere. Chu Hen quickly pulled his body back to defend. His gaze was a little surprised as he looked at the 100 or so afterimages that were flashing around him. This must be the strongest form of the opponent. Lu Fu's real body was hidden in one of the shadows. Moreover, the opponent's technique had a strong concealment ability. The real body could switch back and forth among the other shadows. Even if he found the opponent's position with the power of the demon eye, he could still move to another place in a very short time. Since you like to hide, I'll make it so that you have nowhere to hide. Facing the 100 shadows that were coming at him aggressively and full of killing intent, Chu Hen moved his body and directly leaped up to a higher area in the void. The afterimages chased after him relentlessly, taking advantage of the momentum. Streaks of powerful afterimages of flowing lights were like flowing blades that traced back thousands of years of time. It seemed as if they would not rest until they killed Chu Hen. Humph! However, at this moment, Chu Hen slowly raised the TNI saber in his hand. Thousands of dazzling rays of light bloomed from the blade. A beam of saber radiance, like a pillar of the sky, shot out along the blade, pierced through the clouds, and shook the mountains and rivers. What's that? Everyone was shocked again and again, especially the group from Mount Kunliu. They really couldn't understand how Chu Hen's strength had increased so much in less than 10 days. Especially the long spear he had just used, as well as the lightsaber in front of him. Where did such powerful treasures come from? Roar. Immediately after, a peerlessly domineering roar of a tiger that looked down upon the mountains and rivers reverberated in all directions. Everyone's heartstrings trembled. In the sky above the ninth heaven, thunder clouds rolled, and endless silver light pierced through the clouds. Chu Hen was like a divine light in his palm, and it was as if he wanted to break the sky. Kill. Buzz, the space trembled heavily. Chu Hen looked down and brandished his Tianai blade. In an instant, a huge and majestic white, saber-toothed tiger descended from the sky. It charged out of the thousands of rays of light and pounced towards the nearly 100 shadows below. A terrifying, ferocious aura surged down with a crushing force. All the darkness that permeated the sky was expelled. This saber-toothed tiger was like a divine beast of light from ancient times. Wherever it went, it was unstoppable. Buzz. Endless rays of light whizzed through the air like thousands of light arrows. One after another, the black shadows disappeared under the intense light. When the last shadow was destroyed, Lu Fu had nowhere to hide and was directly exposed under the intense light. Roar. The ferocious aura that was comparable to a mountain crashed onto Lu Fu's body. Dazzling white light shone on her face, and no fear could be seen in her eyes. The saber-toothed tiger continued its charge, and like a huge pillar of light, it fiercely smashed into the waters below. Following that, a loud boom sound instantly shook the mountains and rivers. Huge waves soared into the sky, and the majestic water body sank into the ground in an extremely shocking manner. Majestic shock waves swept out in all directions, and the huge rock barrier that trapped the disciples of Mount Kunlu was directly shattered into smithereens. Everyone on both sides retreated rapidly. The violent wind and rain swept the earth, and in the blink of an eye, the entire dam and river embankment disappeared. Shock. Absolute shock. Everyone from Mount Kunlu and the blood refining hall was stunned. They couldn't imagine that the power of Chu Hen's saber was so terrifying. However, Lu Fu's figure had already disappeared. Between heaven and earth, no trace of her breath could be felt. The three top geniuses were all defeated by Chu Hen. All the disciples of the blood refining hall were completely stunned. Obviously, they had an absolute advantage, but Chu Hen alone turned the tide and saved the overall situation. The three top geniuses, Nangong Ku, Gao Lang, and Lu Fu, were all defeated. The loss of the blood refining hall was immeasurable. Go! Chu Hen held the Tianai saber diagonally, and his body was surrounded by light patterns like the commander of 3 armies. He pointed to the direction where they came from and said, "Kill all the way back." Yes, the morale of everyone in Mount Kunlu was greatly boosted, and their decadence was swept away. They launched the fiercest counterattack against the masters of the blood refining hall. After the hope was extinguished, there was light again. They lost Nangong Ku, but gained Chu Hen. It was absolutely not a loss. Kill. Blood rained. The saber radiance, the sword radiance, and the spear radiance were like lightning. The good situation of the blood refining hall was in a mess in the blink of an eye. Without the command of Gao Lang and Lu Fu, the people of the blood refining hall were in a mess like a pot of ants, and it was difficult for them to keep calm. Chu Hen wielded his saber to kill a bloody Wei, and the others followed him closely. The mountains and forests were flattened, and the blood kept flowing all the way. Boom! However, at this moment, a monstrous and horrible breath suddenly came from the rear area. Little bastard, do you still want to leave here alive today? I'm going to pull out your tendons and peel off your skin to vent my hatred. The majestic momentum was like a thunderclap. All the people in Mount Kunlu were shaken to the point that their chi and blood were boiling, and they could not stand steadily. Chu Hen similarly turned pale with fright. He did not need to think to know who had come. Rumble! The raging, genuine elemental energy rolled over with an overwhelming momentum. Chu Hen's face changed. Without saying anything, He hurriedly flashed to the last area of the people in Mount Kunlu. He waved his Tianai saber, and a saber radiance with a length of hundreds of meters appeared, chopping toward the majestic, genuine, elemental energy wave. Bang! The collision of the two was like a landslide and a tsunami, and the sky shook. In merely an instant, the heaven's execution blade light that Chu Hen had unleashed was shattered into pieces. A boundless force surged forth, causing Chu Hen's body to tremble. He spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying. "You're just an ant. How dare you bare your fangs and brandish your claws in front of me?" Then, in the soaring airwaves, a burly middle-aged figure flew over. He was none other than Ho Lai, one of the 3 leaders of the Blood Refining Hall. The appearance of Ho Lai once again put the people in Mount Kunlu in a huge dilemma. No matter how strong Chu Hen was, he was absolutely no match for Ho Lai. There was no doubt about it. There was no need to think about it. "You guys go first." Chu Hen covered his chest with one hand and held the Tianai saber with the other. He shouted at Lung Lingyan, Ling Tao, and the others behind him with a determined look. Lung Lingyan shook her head and replied helplessly, "It's you who should go." Chu Hen's eyebrows slightly wrinkled, his face revealing a shocked expression. Lung Lingyan knew very well that in this situation, only Chu Hen had a chance to leave, and this opportunity was built on the basis of sacrificing all his companions. "That's right. Junior brother Chu Hen, leave quickly. We'll cover your retreat." Everyone had already taken on the stance of risking their lives. This could buy some time for Chu Hen. However, Ho Lai sneered. He clenched his 5 fingers, and the momentum of a volcanic eruption broke out. "Today no one can leave. Mount Tai collapses. Buzz!" Ho Lai shouted, and one of his hands condensed in the void. Then, a giant palm descended from the sky and blasted straight at the people of Mount Kunliu. Chu Hen was quick to react, and he summoned the blue Ran sword as fast as he could. At the same time, his eyes turned cold, and purple light surged in his pupils. At the same time, a strange black light spread out of his body. The power of chaos and the power of the demon eyes were completely released. Chu Hen knew very well that when facing Ho Lai, being careless was equivalent to courting death. One sword deity, myriad sword tribulation. Swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, the blue Ran sword swept out rapidly, and its entire body was intertwined with black and purple light patterns. In the process of moving, the blue Ran sword divided into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8. In an instant, it turned into hundreds of sword shadows, and the densely packed sword shadows converged into a sword river that clashed with the giant palm. Boom! Bang! The continuous heavy explosions were like the crisscrossing of thunder. The terrifying palm force and the powerful sword river constantly collided, and the sky seemed to welcome fireworks. Layers upon layers of aftershocks swept across the world. Blue Ran sword. Ho Lai's face was gloomy and cold. "It's you, you hateful thing." Feeling the ferocious aura from Ho Lai, Chu Hen was secretly shocked. A casual attack from Ho Lai required him to use all his strength. This kind of gap was really too big. If it wasn't for Ho Lai and demon-slaying Palace Master when Liang being injured before, with Ho Lai's peak condition, it would be extremely difficult for him to receive a single palm strike from Ho Lai. But even so, Chu Hen could at most last 2 or 3 rounds against Ho Lai. What should I do? Chapter 787. The undulating airwaves surged in all directions. With the arrival of Ho Lai, one of the most authoritative figures of the Blood Refining Hall, the people of the Blood Refining Hall regained their composure. On the other hand, the people of Mount Kunliu had their hopes extinguished once again. Their expressions were extremely grim as they clenched their teeth. Their gazes were all focused on the young figure at the forefront. Chu Hen and Ho Lai were confronting each other, even though the latter's aura was as strong as a mountain. Ho Lai's eyebrows were filled with murderous intent. He was both angry and surprised. He saw anxiety, seriousness, and some panic on Chu Hen's face, but there was no fear. This really surprised Ho Lai. A mere disciple of Mount Kunliu was standing in front of him without the slightest bit of fear. Such courage was something that not many people in the entire Victory East region could do. Of course, what made Holai even more furious was the huge change that happened today. With Nangong Bai, Gaolang, and Lu Fu's strength, they would be able to take down these people from Mount Kunliu in an instant. Holai, who had been quietly waiting for good news, was extremely furious when he heard the news that Nangong Bai, Gaolang, and Lu Fu had been defeated. What awaited the group from Mount Kunliu was Holai's most terrifying fury. Buzz! Holai's gaze turned cold. Following that, he condensed a single palm, and a wave of aura surged out from his body. The space trembled, and the ground below also deeply caved in. At the same time, the dead branches and leaves on the ground immediately turned into hidden darts that could take people's lives. Along with the powerful wave of air, they all attacked Chu Hen. Chu Hen's pupils shrank, and a look of determination flashed across his eyes. Swoosh! Then Chu Hen advanced instead of retreating. He held the Tianai saber in his hand and deflected the flying darts and stones. Ding, ding, ding. The flying stones and leaves hit the Tianai saber and produced a series of crisp sounds. Chu Hen's eyes were deep and his saber light was like a shadow moving against the torrent. Everyone from Mount Kunliu wanted to step forward to help, but they discovered that they couldn't even keep up with Chu Hen's footsteps. Chu Hen was like a swallow returning to its nest. His movements were extremely nimble as he repeatedly dodged the flying stones and falling leaves that pounced at him. Then, he charged at Holai, who was in front of him. Everyone was surprised by Chu Hen's behavior. It was far from enough to say that the other party was courageous and insightful. This could already be considered as someone who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Who was Holai? He was one of the most powerful people in the blood refining hall, a genuine expert in the sky profound realm. Amir Chu Hen was simply an ant in front of the other party, Chi-Chi, along with the manic interweaving of thunder and lightning. The sharp Tianai blade rapidly pulsated with the concentrated power of dark lightning. The Tianai blade in Chu Hen's hand was like a divine radiance, directly stabbing towards Holai's throat in a head-on manner. Kill! Chu Hen shouted, the veins on his arms bulging. Humph! Looking at the ferocious young man in front of him, Holai's face showed a disdainful and contemptuous smile. When the tip of the Tianai saber was less than 5 centimeters away from Chu Hen's throat, Holai raised his hand and punched on Chu Hen's chest. Chu Hen couldn't even catch Holai's movement. He only saw a residual shadow passing by. Then he felt a pain in his chest. Then he fell straight from the sky and heavily hit the ground, raising a cloud of dust. That's all you've got? Stupid. Holai sneered in a low voice. As soon as he finished his words, he directly turned into a streamer and rushed straight at Chu Hen. Chu Hen's face changed. Regardless of the surging qi and blood in his body, he quickly turned over and stood up, bouncing away quickly. The next moment, with a deafening sound of bang, the ground exploded, the rubble splashed, and the ground sank violently. Countless cracks spread rapidly. The thick stone and soil collapsed layer by layer, breaking inch by inch. The air billows and dust filled the air in all directions, and a huge pit appeared in front of everyone's horrified eyes. It was on a completely different level. Everyone on Mount Kunliu was alarmed, and their palms were sweating. Senior Sister Ling Yan, what should we do? A disciple asked anxiously. However, at this time, Lung Ling Yan was also helpless. Not to mention that she was seriously injured. Even if she was at her peak, she wouldn't dare to act rashly in front of Holai. Rumble! Rubble rolled, crushing the surrounding jungle vegetation. Holai stood in the center of the pit, his clothes neat and clean, without a trace of dust on his body. As for Chu Hen, he was half squatting on the ground. Although he didn't have any obvious injuries, he looked very miserable, with many parts of his body damaged. Chu Hen's hand tightened, and he tightened his grip on the hilt of the saber. A beam of black lightning darted up the saber. Then Chu Hen stood up, pushed off with one leg, and rushed out again. Chi-Chi, The TNI saber, covered in the fierce power of dark lightning, slashed horizontally at his opponent's neck. Ta! Holai raised his arm unhurriedly and easily clasped his opponent's wrist. Shu Hen's eyes turned cold. He turned sideways and lifted his leg to sweep at Holai's head. Although his speed was fast and his movements were nimble in Holai's eyes, Shu Hen was full of openings. You can get lost, bang. Not waiting for Shu Hen's attack to be effective, Holai's foot landed on Shu Hen's chest. A ring of purple and black light exploded, and Shu Hen was once again sent flying. His continuous attacks seemed to have no effect, and he couldn't even get close to Holai. It's over. Holai raised his hand and slashed out a palm blade. The powerful palm blade went all the way, and wherever it went, a wide gully was created on the ground. Shu Hen's expression turned slightly cold. However, just as the palm blade was about to reach him, he leaped up into the air and dodged the attack. He still had the strength to dodge. On Mount Kunliu, everyone from the blood refining hall was stunned. After being attacked by Holai at close range twice in a row, an ordinary person would have been unable to get up. However, Shu Hen persisted with his physical strength that was far beyond that of an ordinary person. The killing intent in Holai's heart rose again. No matter what, this man couldn't be left alive. At the same time, Shu Hen's body abruptly released a dense purple light. Holai's pupils slightly shrank, and in the next instant, the surrounding space immediately sank into a strange state of distortion. Accompanied by a bone-chilling cold current, a purple flame that soared into the sky filled the air. Boom! The earth-shattering purple demonic flame surged from all directions and directly enveloped Holai. The Nirvana demonic flame spread extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it spread to an area with a radius of 1,000 feet. Holai was completely surrounded by the purple flame, as if he was in the center of a storm. Even so, Holai's face was still full of disdain. What followed was an amazingly strong sword momentum. Holai was slightly shocked. He saw the flame wave in front of him quickly split from the middle, and a huge green sword shadow attacked from the front. The wind was rising, the clouds were surging, the airwaves were monstrous, and the unparalleled power completely crushed. The huge green sword shadow tore the air apart, broke everything, and the terrifying lethality was unstoppable. Everyone from the blood refining hall and Mount Kunliu widened their eyes. They had to admit that Shu Hen's response was really brilliant. The purple flame was just a camouflage, and the real killing move was yet to come. No one present might be able to bear the power of this sword, but Holai didn't even bother to lift his eyelids. He directly raised his right palm and faced the tip of the huge sword head-on. Boom! Like a meteorite colliding with a star, the mountains collapsed, the earth cracked, and the mountains shook. In an instant, the terrifying sword momentum was immediately suppressed and could no longer move forward. Too weak. Holai shouted in a deep voice. Pong! With an explosive sound, the huge green sword shadow shattered inch by inch, like a collapsing stone pillar, completely shattering into pieces. Hiss! Everyone from Mount Kunliu gasped. Holai's power was so strong that it was difficult to resist. Even such a powerful killing move of Shu Hen couldn't do anything to him. Give up. You're too weak. Holai sneered as if he was sentencing Shu Hen to death. However, at this moment, in the wanton power light pattern, a swift and fierce figure directly passed through the sword light phantoms and rushed to the front of Holai at the fastest speed. Don't be happy too early. The slightly violent voice once again made everyone's heart tremble. Swoosh! With a sound, the figure pounced on Holai like a leopard. He stretched out his left hand, and a dazzling starlight burst out from his body. What was reflected in Holai's eyes was astonishingly a pair of bewitching purple pupils. Without waiting for the former to react, 7 stars suddenly floated on Shu Hen's palm. 4 of the stars were as bright as stars. I haven't admitted defeat yet. Controlling the light in the sky, it was dazzling. Shu Hen seemed to be controlling a bright star. Endless dazzling light bloomed, and a terrifying power surged down, blasting towards Ho Lai in front of him. Star Soul quadruple critical strike. Bang! An unprecedented violent power spread in the area between Chu Hen and Ho Lai in an instant. The raging starlight pillar rushed to the sky, and the ground cracked, sinking hundreds of feet deep and spanning a few miles. Layers of rocks were crushed into powder, and the grass and trees were reduced to dust. The power of the fusion of 4 Star Soul pearls was concentrated at one point, and it was enough to destroy heaven and earth and destroy mountains and rivers. Everyone from Blood Refining Hall and Mount Kunliu was shaken to the point that they kept retreating, and Chu Hen was also shaken out. He was dragged on the ground for hundreds of meters before he could stop. At this moment, everyone's eyes widened in shock. Everyone's eyes swept to where Ho Lai was. The other party was still standing in the same place like a rock, without moving half a step. What? This? Astonishment covered everyone's face. At this moment, Ho Lai's face was gloomy and pale. The restless true energy floated outside his body, and his breath obviously became more rapid. The blood in his body was boiling, and his internal organs were aching. His momentum was obviously weakened. Ho Lai had been hit by one Liang's heart-destroying palm, and his injury had not yet healed. Just now, Chu Hen's super powerful critical strike directly triggered the other party's injury. This was beyond Ho Lai's expectation, and even more so, no one present dared to imagine. Anger was written all over his face. Ho Lai fiercely stared at Chu Hen, who staggered to get up. For the first time, a chill rose in his heart. This young man was too unsettling. If he didn't die today, he would become a disaster in the future. Kill him. Kill everyone. Ho Lai roared. Yes, everyone from Blood Refining Hall said nothing and immediately launched a fierce attack. However, just as he finished speaking, a vast and mighty force of rolling thunder swept over from the sky in the direction of the Fishwater stream. The pressure was comparable to the impact of a flood, sweeping all the way down. Boom! With a loud sound, the wind scattered the clouds, and the astral wind raged. A domineering and powerful figure descended from the sky, and then blocked in front of Chu Hen. You've done well. Leave the rest to me. The momentum was like thunder, and it gave people a sense of magnanimity in its majesty. Chapter 788. You've done a good job. Leave the rest to me. The extremely dignified voice was as coarse as thunder. Looking at the tall and sturdy figure standing in front of Chu Hen, excitement instantly appeared in the eyes of all the disciples of Mount Kunliu. Meanwhile, Chu Hen felt relieved from the bottom of his heart. He shook his head and chuckled. You've finally arrived. My task is completed. Hearing that, Ho Lai, the leader of the Blood Refining Hall, couldn't help but tremble in his heart. Suddenly, he was overwhelmed with shock. He seemed to find that he had fallen into Chu Hen's trap. The way Chu Hen risked his life to fight with Ho Lai earlier did not seem to be, because Ho Lai did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Everything Chu Hen did was to trigger the injuries in Ho Lai's body and wait for the arrival of the Devil Slaughter Palace Master, Wen Liang. This was a gamble. Undoubtedly, Chu Hen made the right bet. At this moment, the chill in Ho Lai's heart was more intense. This young man in his 20s was much more terrifying than he had imagined. Boom! Soon after, a wave of murderous aura poured down. Numerous figures with powerful auras charged over from the direction of Fishwater Stream. We're here. Senior Sister Ling Yan, Junior Brother Chu Hen. Sorry to keep you waiting. Kill. Without any superfluous words, the mighty masters of Mount Kunliu pierced into the interior of the Blood Refining Hall like a sharp sword. The killing intent soared like a hot knife through butter. Many terrifying forces surged over with overwhelming momentum. All the disciples of the Blood Refining Hall had no time to defend. They were all shocked and hurriedly started to resist. Looking at the people who came to rescue them, the people of Mount Kunliu who were besieged by the people of the Blood Refining Hall were all excited. They're all here, huh? Senior Sister Ling Yan, we're all saved. Lung Ling Yan was also relieved. She looked back at the young figure who was in a mess with blood stains on his face. She couldn't help but feel touched. Wen Liang and Ho Lai's confrontation once again caused airwaves to rise and fill the air. The center of the space between the two of them immediately fell into a rhythm. Wen Liang coldly stared at Ho Lai, his voice reverberating like thunder. "Now, your opponent is me, Humph." Ho Lai sneered, his aura burning like fire. "Come." Boom! As soon as they finished speaking, the two of them soared into the sky as a monstrous aura akin to a tsunami erupted from their bodies. In an instant, the sky turned dark and the 9 heavens lost their color. Layers upon layers of dark clouds shrouded the sky as a huge region was instantly plunged into a violent storm. Wen Liang and Ho Lai's figures were directly enveloped by an enormous tornado formed from the convergence of true Yuan power. Boom! Bang! Continuous heavy explosions reverberated in the void, like volcanoes, like falling stars. It was earth-shattering, shaking mountains and rivers. The battle between the two top experts of the sky, profound realm, flattened the mountains, reversed the rivers, and crushed the forests and vegetation into fine powder. Chu Hen, who was below, raised his head to look at the chaotic sky. His expression was slightly solemn, but he was even more amazed. The earth profound realm and the sky profound realm could not be compared on the same level. Such a power was truly formidable. Rumble, suddenly, accompanied by the extremely powerful aura of thousands upon thousands of men and horses slaughtering each other. A tyrannical aura that could crush the entire battlefield spread out in all directions. Under the sky, an enormous phantom figure that was 1,000 meters tall had astonishingly appeared. The illusory figure had a tall and slender body, with 4 sharp and long limbs. It wore a triangular helmet on its head. Everyone's hearts trembled. This illusory figure had appeared during the intense battle between Chu Hen and Nan Gongqian. However, the might emitted by the two of them was as different as heaven and earth. Woo! The enormous phantom let out a howl that sounded like the wail of a ghost. It raised both of its arms high up, and layers of space distorted between its palms. Streams of vigorous scarlet light converged to form a giant halberd. Demon Slayer Slash. Bang! It was earth-shattering, and its power pierced through the galaxy. Under countless horrified gazes, the phantom directly pierced the giant halberd into the incomparably chaotic true energy storm in front of it. In an instant, the wind raged between heaven and earth, and the true energy swept in all directions. The incomparably majestic and monstrous power detonated the void. In the particularly chaotic true energy storm, 2 figures once again appeared in everyone's sight. Wen Liang was still arrogant and awe-inspiring. His pair of cold eyes were like the god of thunder, full of fury. However, Ho Lai's breath was weak, and his face was pale. Streaks of blood constantly flowed down the corners of his mouth. It was obvious. Ho Lai was defeated. At this moment, the hearts of all the people of the blood refining hall fell to the bottom. They all knew very well what this meant. Ahem. Ho Lai covered his chest with one hand, and his eyes were a little weak. He said meaningfully, "After so many years of fighting, you finally won. I just want to die under your strongest blow, as you wish." Buzz. Immediately, the huge phantom suspended above the void once again had an imposing manner. It raised the trident in its hand high, and spiral-shaped cyclones lingered around the body of the halberd and rotated rapidly, emitting a momentum that could break the sky. However, just as Wen Liang was accumulating his strength, the powerlessness on Ho Lai's face suddenly turned in a strong unwillingness and determination. Swoosh! In the next moment, Ho Lai suddenly rushed out and actually swept towards a young figure in the area below at an extremely fast speed. The opponent's target was none other than Chu Hen. Oh no! All the people of Mount Kunliu were shocked. "Chu Hen, be careful!" Lung Lingyan couldn't help but exclaim. No one expected that Ho Lai would attack Chu Hen at the last moment. "For the future of the blood refining hall, I can't let you live." Whole Eye's eyes were full of determination, and the powerful true energy gathered and beat rapidly in his palm. Chu Hen's pupils shrank slightly. In his current state, there was no way to avoid the coming fatal blow. At this critical moment, the flow of time seemed to slow down. Just when the distance between the two was less than 10 meters, a red halberd, like a divine punishment from heaven, slashed down vertically toward Whole Eye's head. What? Whole Eye was shocked, and his face changed dramatically. Endless panic surged in his eyes. No, boom! The heavy shockwave was like a thunderbolt. The peerlessly imposing scarlet halberd landed on Whole Eye's body with an endless destructive shockwave. With a hurried and short-lived roar, Whole Eye's figure directly turned into ashes and disappeared without trace. Bang! The mighty aftermath swept out in all directions, and a large area of the ground was deeply sunken. All kinds of stones flew into the sky and splashed everywhere. Chu Hen, who was closest to the target, was blasted out again. The terrible power shook his chi and blood, and his internal organs trembled. He almost fainted. Just at that moment, a nimble figure that was as swift as a swallow quietly flashed to his side and brought Chu Hen into her arms. Chu Hen's heart was slightly startled. What entered his eyes was a beautiful face that was like a lotus flower coming out of the water. Swoosh! Subsequently, Lung Lingyan moved and brought Chu Hen back to the waist of a broken peak. When the two of them landed, Chu Hen was not seriously injured. Instead, Lung Lingyan's delicate body trembled, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Senior Sister Lung Yu? Chu Hen's expression changed slightly. He suddenly remembered that Lung Lingyan had been hit by Nangong Hao's heart destruction palm earlier, and she was still in a severely injured state. Lung Lingyan shook her head slightly, and her breathing was erratic. I'm fine. Seeing this, Chu Hen could not help but feel a little warm in his heart, and he was slightly grateful. At the same time, the Demon Slayer Palace Master, Wen Liang, stood proudly in the sky like an overlord who controlled all directions. After fighting for so many years, how can I not know you, Whole Eye? Wen Liang smiled coldly. Then, he raised his hand and waved. He looked at the defeated experts of the blood refining hall and said, It's time for us to counterattack. Kill, kill. The wind was howling and blood rained down. Whole Eye's death brought an absolutely devastating blow to the people of the blood refining hall. They were utterly defeated and fled in all directions. The people of Mount Kun Lu counterattacked, and blood was slaughtered for dozens of miles. Chapter 789. The cold wind blew gently and chilled their faces. After the fierce battle, Mount Kunliu welcomed the first rare peace since they came to the ancient desolate heaven domain. At the same time, there was also the relaxation and joy of victory. Mount Kunliu had obtained a complete victory in this battle. They slaughtered dozens of miles and killed Whole Eye, one of the most powerful people of the blood refining hall. The remaining members of the blood refining hall fled in all directions like monkeys on a fallen tree. At a glance, there were corpses everywhere. The cruelty of the battle between sects was displayed here. It's finally over. We won. Now I can finally relax, Yi Zichen said. The disciples of Mount Kunliu looked at each other and revealed a sincere and relaxed smile. Everyone wiped the bloodstains off their faces and bodies, supported their injured companions, and took care of the corpses of their fellow disciples. Senior brother Chu Hen, how are you feeling? Do you want me to check your injuries? A medical disciple walked over and asked. Chu Hen shook his head, indicating that he was fine. I'm fine. You can treat Senior Sister Lingyan. In order to help Chu Hen, Lung Lingyan's previous injuries were affected again. As a result, her face was extremely pale. Was it the hidden force of the heart-destroying palm? At this moment, a dignified and heavy voice came into their ears. Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan were stunned and called out at the same time. Palace Master. Wen Liang waved his hand and looked at Chu Hen with a complicated gaze. After a short moment of silence, he said in a sincere and heartfelt tone, This time, you saved all of us, including me. As soon as he said that, Everyone in the surroundings looked at him with deep gratitude. Indeed, if Chu Hen hadn't killed Gao Lang, Lu Fu, and Nangong Quan, the corpses of the people of Mount Kunliu would have filled the Fish River. If Chu Hen hadn't used up Ho Lai's energy, how could Wen Liang have finished the battle? Without a doubt, Chu Hen was the biggest contributor to this battle. This is what I should do. Chu Hen replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Wen Liang heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he took out a black token with a flick of his palm. As they gazed at the command token, the eyelids of everyone present raised while they revealed astounded expressions, and even Lung Lingyan was slightly surprised. Without waiting for Chu Hen to have any doubts, Wen Liang said with a solemn expression, "This seat, Wen Liang, represents the entire demon-slaying hall to appoint you as the next sect master of Mount Kunlu Hua." The audience was in an uproar, followed by earth-shattering cheers and applause. The sudden scene caused Chu Hen to be caught unprepared. When Chu Hen saw the Black Order token that Wen Liang passed to him, he could not help but smile from the bottom of his heart. He knew that Wen Liang's opinion of him had completely changed. "Thank you, Palace Master." Chu Hen received the token with both hands, his eyes shining brightly. "Chu Hen, I was too harsh to you previously. Today, I apologize to you. The future of Mount Kunliu is in your hands," Wen Liang said softly. "You're too kind, Palace Master. I don't deserve it." Previously, when they were at Mount Kunliu, Wen Liang had always found it difficult to accept Chu Hen. Although he had embarrassed Chu Hen and Qi Hanyu many times, it was undeniable that everything Wen Liang did was for the sake of Mount Kunliu. Based on this alone, Chu Hen would not hold a grudge against him for the past. "Palace Master, Nangong Ku is still alive." Suddenly, a strange voice caused the atmosphere to become silent. Everyone looked at each other with a strange expression on their faces. However, Chu Hen said, "Palace Master, I avoided hitting his vital parts with my spear. I think it's better for you to deal with him." Everyone came to a realization. It turned out that Chu Hen had done it on purpose. He did not take Nangong Ku's life back then. When Liang smiled, there was a hint of helplessness and relief in his smile. The helplessness was that Chu Hen was far superior to Nangong Ku not only in terms of cultivation, but also in his wisdom and character. That was because he was the one who taught Nangong Ku, so there was nothing he could do. What was comforting was that the future sect master of Mount Kunlu was so admirable. Phew! When Liang exhaled deeply, he closed his eyes and opened them again. "Let's give him a quick death." Everyone fell silent. Everyone could feel the complicated feelings in Wen Liang's heart. At the same time, this was the best outcome. In the blink of an eye, several days had passed. In the fish stream, the waterfall was like the Milky Way, flowing for thousands of feet. Early in the morning, at the summit of a mountain range, the surging and mighty power of the stars flowed between heaven and earth, and the entire mountain stream produced bursts of rhythmic fluctuations. Then, with a deafening boom, the earth shook and rocks flew everywhere. A majestic mountain ridge was directly smashed in the middle, and a huge pit opened up in the ground. Such a huge commotion so early in the morning. "Are you trying to fill up the entire mountain range?" A light voice with a hint of laughter sounded. Lung Lingyan had just flown over when she was stunned by the scene in front of her. A huge circular pit appeared in the ground below. Countless cracks spread out in all directions like a spider's web. Traces of violent, destructive aura still lingered in the air, and in the sky ahead, Chu Hen stood proudly under the blue dome of heaven. Streaks of starlight intertwined around his right arm, displaying the power to control heaven and earth. Seeing Lung Lingyan, Chu Hen retracted the aura around his body. He raised his head and smiled. "Seeing your sister, Lingyan, are your injuries better?" I'm almost done." Lung Lingyan nodded and said, "What martial technique are you cultivating?" "It's so powerful. A martial technique that I obtained in the 100 Kingdoms continent." "Oh? There's actually such a powerful martial technique manual in such a small place?" Chu Hen smiled. "That's right, and I haven't even reached the highest level yet." Lung Lingyan was even more surprised. Looks like there's an unknown secret behind that martial technique manual. Unknown secret? The corner of Chu Hen's eyes slightly narrowed. An array of light couldn't help but flash across his heart. Behind the Big Dipper Heavenly Star technique was the Seven Souls Kingdom, and after the Seven Souls Kingdom perished, it became the current Seven Souls Palace. Back then, the W Star Spirit Envoy asked him to pass a mysterious box to a descendant of the Seven Souls Kingdom's royal family. Mysterious box. 6 years, and the powerful Big Dipper Heavenly Star technique. These clues did not seem to be related, but if they were linked to the ancient Desolation Heaven domain, it would immediately raise suspicions. Could it be that the Big Dipper Heavenly Star technique came from the ancient Desolation Heaven domain? The people from the Seven Souls Kingdom had come here the last time the ancient Desolation Heaven domain opened. It was highly possible. However, Chu Hen did not dwell on this for too long. As long as the Seven Souls Palace was mentioned, Chu Hen would still feel a little unhappy. Senior brother Chu Hen, senior sister Ling Yan. The Hall Master is looking for you. A young man flew over in a flash. Got it, Chu Hen replied. Soon after, he and Lung Ling Yan rushed towards the direction of the fish stream. In the fish stream, the disciples of Mount Kunlu were all ready to go. Over the past few days, Wen Liang had ordered everyone to take a break after the battle. At the same time, they were waiting for news from Qi Hanyu. In the blink of an eye, so many days had passed, but Qi Hanyu still had not returned. Shan Zhen, Qin Shi, Xu Hua, and Mu Feng had not sent back any news either. This made them feel a little restless. It seemed like Wen Liang was preparing to leave this place. Hall Master, Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan landed in front of Wen Liang one after another. Wen Liang nodded slightly and said, You should know the reason why I called you here. The two of them looked at each other and nodded. All right, both of you will lead 20 people to the southwest to search for the whereabouts of the Hall Master of the Flying Celestial Palace. As for the rest, follow me to the north to search. We'll meet up at the River Sky City. River Sky City? Chu Hen muttered softly. The River Sky City is a big city in the ancient Desolate Heaven territory that is connected to the main road. Many sects and forces will gather there to exchange information. Lung Lingyan explained softly. As one of the top forces in the Eastern Victory State, Mount Kunlu had already obtained a lot of information and maps about the ancient Desolate Heaven territory before they came to the ancient Desolate Heaven territory. Therefore, everyone knew about the existence of the River Sky City. Both of you must be careful. Liaoqi Xiao from the Blood Refining Sect has disappeared with the Hall Master of the Flying Celestial Palace. If you encounter him, remember not to act rashly. Also, Wen Liang paused before he said to Lung Lingyan and the others, If you're in danger, your first task is to protect the safety of the next sect leader. Understood, Lung Lingyan said firmly. Today, even when Liang supported Chu Hen, if there were no accidents, Chu Hen becoming the sect master of Mount Kunlu was a matter that was nailed to an iron plate. Therefore, Chu Hen's safety was the top priority. Naturally, Wen Liang could bring Chu Hen with him. However, if he did that, he would be wasting the opportunity to train in the ancient Desolate Heaven territory. Wen Liang believed in Chu Hen's ability. However, Chu Hen still had a long way to go. Therefore, it was best for them to split into 2 teams. Wen Liang then picked 20 elite disciples with extraordinary strength and formed a new team with Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan. Su Lang and Ling Tao were naturally among them. Apart from that, they also needed disciples who were good at tracking and sensing. After a series of instructions, Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan left Fish Water Stream with their team. Chapter 790. After the battle at Fish Water Stream, a team led by Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan began searching for the whereabouts of Qi Hanyu, the sect leader of the Flying Celestial Palace. The search area continued to expand, but they still could not sense the aura of Qi Hanyu and the others. Along the way, they were more or less anxious. After all, there were many things that could not be predicted in the ancient Desolate Heaven territory. After losing contact with them for such a long time, it was difficult to determine what had happened. Swoosh! As a lithe figure flashed down, More than a dozen figures standing on a mountain peak cast inquiring gazes over. "How is it? Did you find anything?" Sulang asked as he walked up. The man lifted his eyelids slightly, nodded at Sulang, and then looked back at the young man and woman behind him. "Senior brother Chu Hen, senior sister Ling Yan. I found this ahead." As he spoke, he took out a piece of bark the size of a palm. The bark looked like it had just been shaved off, and on the bark, a small eagle pattern was engraved. It faintly emitted some weak fluctuations of spiritual energy. Sulang's eyes lit up as he exclaimed, "This is the signal left behind by senior brother Shanjun." Sulang was Ling Tao's partner, and he had worked with Danjun many times in the past. He was very familiar with the signal mark Danjun released, and he could identify it with just one glance. Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan looked at each other. Both of them were pleasantly surprised. After so many days, they finally had a clue. Lung Lingyan's red lips parted as she asked, "Where did you find this?" "Reporting to senior sister Lingyan, 25 miles ahead." "What's so special about that place?" "There's nothing special about the place senior brother Shanjun left the mark. However, there's a strange blood forest about 10 miles ahead." "Blood forest?" Everyone was slightly stunned and revealed bewildered expressions. "What's a blood forest?" Chu Hen asked in a deep voice. "It's a dense and lush forest. However, all the trees in the forest are strangely red. I didn't dare to enter rashly, so I came back to report it." Chu Hen nodded slightly. A hint of solemnity could be seen in his eyes. A blood-red forest. Just from the man's description, it gave off the feeling that it was a place of great danger. In addition, Dan Jun and the others had left for so long and had yet to return. Clearly, there was something fishy about that place. After a brief discussion, everyone headed in that direction without any hesitation. After a short while, a vast, magnificent, and extremely bizarre scene appeared before Chu Hen, Lung Lingyan, and the others. The endless blood-colored forest was like a vast ocean. The towering trees looked extremely strange. There were many forks on the branches, and each tree looked like a monster bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. Once someone stepped into it, it seemed as if they would not hesitate to open their bloody mouths hidden under the branches. These strange red trees were of different sizes. The smaller ones were dozens of meters tall, while the larger ones extended hundreds of meters. From afar, this place looked like a gigantic blood branch cage. There doesn't seem to be anything special about it, a disciple of Mount Kunliu casually said. "Don't be careless." Ling Tao frowned slightly and warned, "This forest is lifeless. I can't even sense the aura of a living creature. This is definitely not a good place." Chu Hen turned slightly and said to a delicate and pretty young girl behind him, "Junior sister Xiao, try to sense if there's any aura of Danjun and the others." "Yes, senior brother Chu Hen." The young girl nodded seriously. Then, she clasped her hands together and formed a seal. An invisible force flowed out of her body rhythmically. After a while, she slowly opened her eyes with an apologetic and remorseful look on her face. "I'm sorry, senior brother Chu Hen. I can't sense their aura." Chu Hen smiled. "It's all right. It's not your fault." The others were slightly disappointed. In Mount Kunliu, Li Xiu's perception was second only to Nongqi. If even she cannot find them, things would not be so simple. "What did you discover?" Lung Lingyan looked at Chu Hen in surprise. The other party's angular profile gave him a calm temperament. Chu Hen did not reply immediately. After a moment of silence, he said, "Let's enter from below." As he said this, a faint purple light flashed in the depths of Chu Hen's eyes. And Chu Hen could see very clearly that the area above the blood-colored forest in front of them was filled with an extremely dense, baleful aura. The seemingly wide and unobstructed area above was actually filled with hidden dangers. Immediately, with Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan leading the way, everyone entered the blood forest with their hearts filled with caution. The quiet forest was especially deathly still. The more one was in such an environment, the more one would be on guard. Trees that looked like ghosts stood in the surroundings. The group could not help but have the illusion that they had barged into a den of demons. And the deeper they went, the denser the trees became. The lush branches and leaves blocked the sky, and the light became increasingly dim. Oppression gradually enveloped everyone's hearts. After almost an hour, even Lung Lingyan frowned. The others were even paler, sweating profusely and panting weakly. "What's going on?" "I'm getting more and more tired." Su Lang finally could not help but speak. The others hurriedly chimed in. "That's right. We're clearly not doing anything, but our stamina is being depleted so quickly. This is too strange. Senior Brother Chu Hen, how are you feeling?" Everyone looked at Chu Hen. However, what was surprising was that Chu Hen was completely fine. He was calm and composed, and the rhythm of his breathing did not change at all. "What's wrong with all of you? Why you look so pale?" The one who spoke was the perception-type young female disciple, just now Li Xiao. "What's going on? Junior Sister Xiao, are you all right too?" Ling Tao asked with wide eyes. "I'm fine." Li Xiao also looked confused, but she appeared very relaxed. This time, everyone was a little confused. There were so many people, but why were Chu Hen and Li Xiao the only two people who were fine? The others were getting more and more tired. Hiss. Suddenly, at this moment, a series of rustling sounds rang in everyone's ears. What followed closely was a thick aura of danger. Everyone was greatly alarmed. Before they could react, they saw strong vines suddenly spread over, entangling the people from Mount Kunliu like venomous snakes. "Be on guard," Chu Hen shouted, then waved his hand. A swift and fierce black sword energy slashed down, directly cutting the few vines that were charging at the front. The others also took this opportunity to take out their weapons and fight back. "What the hell?" Su Lang raised his sword and slashed at a vine that was as thick as a wrist. With a crisp ding, sparks flew in the air, and a sword mark that was only half an inch deep appeared on the vine. "It can't be." Su Lang was instantly shocked. The current him was already an expert of the Earth Profound realm, but with his strength he could not even cut a single vine. However, it was not only Su Lang. Other than Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan, the others found it difficult to destroy the vines in one blow. These vines were as strong as steel ropes, and their tenacity was comparable to divine weapons. Even the sacred weapons in everyone's hands seemed to be struggling to cut them. Cold light flashed, and the shadows of swords intersected. The number of vines kept increasing, and they enveloped everyone from all directions with the momentum of a cage. What was even more shocking was that the blood-red towering trees shook their strong and lush branches and swept towards the crowd. The densely packed branches intersected on their own, like a bird's nest, trapping everyone inside. "This won't do. If this goes on, the area we can move will become smaller and smaller. We must rush out quickly." Lung Lingyan frowned. Then she stretched out her jade-like palm, and a spiral-shaped white air wave spun rapidly in the center of her palm. The powerful and terrifying palm force directly blasted towards a giant tree that was more than 100 meters tall. Bang! The peerlessly powerful palm force poured down, and the giant tree shook violently. Countless cracks spread rapidly on the trunk, and it immediately lost its vitality. "Good." Everyone's eyes lit up. However, before they could say the word good, the middle of the giant tree collapsed, and vines that looked like venomous pythons shot out and attacked Lung Lingyan at an extremely fast speed. Lung Lingyan's pretty face changed slightly, and she hurriedly retreated. The vines pursued her relentlessly like spirit snakes and WRMS. They soared up and down and followed Lung Lingyan to various places. In the blink of an eye, a bird's nest cage was formed, single sword flying immortal technique. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A powerful sword aura gushed out from Chu Hen's body. In the face of such a situation, Chu Hen immediately summoned the blue sky sword. The blue sky sword that was like a green ray of light transformed into countless sword shadows that flew back and forth wantonly, slashing the vines one after another. The sword aura was like the rain, and the speed was like the wind. Chu Hen's domineering attitude slightly relieved everyone. Even so, the situation was not optimistic. If Chu Hen continued to use the single sword flying immortal technique, his body's quintessential essence would be depleted endlessly. When his quintessential essence was finally depleted, the outcome would be obvious. Let's retreat first. Lung Lingyan said to Chu Hen with a little worry. The corners of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed slightly, and he fell into deep thought. They were already deep in, and they might be able to pass through this forest if they persevered a little longer. If they left now, all their previous efforts would be wasted. Similarly, if the road ahead of them was still too far to reach, then everyone might very well be buried here. At that moment, Chu Hen suddenly caught a glimpse of Li Xiao from the corner of his eye. Although Li Xiao was a little flustered, every strike of her sword could easily sever those sturdy vines. What was this? Li Xiao's cultivation level was not the strongest among them. Instead, she was considered the weakest among the 20 people who came this time. Yet, her performance along the way was so surprising. Could it be? Chu Hen shouted, "Junior Sister Xiao, are you a pattern artist?" This sudden question startled everyone, including Li Xiao. She nodded, and a powerful Reiki energy spread out from her Niwen palace without any concealment. So that was it? I understand now. Chu Hen raised his eyebrows. This was what he and Li Xiao had in common. Just as he finished speaking, a powerful Reiki energy spread out, and various dazzling runes lingered around Chu Hen and danced around him. Whoosh! A loud and clear sword chime sounded like an eagle's cry. Gorgeous runes gathered on the blue sky sword, forming a strange and exquisite pattern. Swoosh! The next moment, the blue sky sword, which was surrounded by the power of runes, burst out and pierced straight ahead. Boom! The invisible and majestic sword aura was like divine help under the enhancement of the Reiki energy. Towering trees were cut in half, and vines were directly crushed into pieces. Branches and leaves flew everywhere, and dust flew everywhere. In an instant, a dark and deep passage appeared in everyone's vision. "Follow me." Chu Hen's figure moved, and he directly rushed out. Chapter 791. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh in the dark and dense forest, tall, blood-colored trees danced like a group of demons. The team led by Chu Hen and Lung Lingyan moved forward at an extremely fast speed. Everyone followed closely behind Chu Hen, their expressions grim, not daring to relax at all. Boom! Bang! The blue Ran sword opened the way in front, like a swordfish in the deep sea. Like a hot knife through butter, wherever it went, it flattened the blood-colored trees and minced the vines and vegetation. Chu Hen was calm and collected, his eyes flashing with star-like wisdom. This strange forest had a strong restriction on Wu Xiao, but it was much easier for a pattern caster. From the beginning, Chu Hen had been thinking about the similarities between him and Li Xiao. The only reason was that there was a big gap between their cultivation bases. Attacking with Reiki energy was much easier than using true origin energy. Buzz, buzz. Chu Hen continuously injected Reiki energy into the blue Ran sword and controlled it from a distance. Under the attack of the blue Ran sword, branches and leaves flew everywhere, and debris splashed everywhere. A path was forcibly opened up. Many obstacles in front of him were cut in half at the waist, and their branches were cut off. The piercingly cold and powerful sword energy even left a deep ravine on the ground. However, at the same time that Chu Hen was continuously opening a path in front of him, the path behind him was quickly being blocked. Giant blood-colored trees rapidly closed in from both sides, spreading out and merging, blocking the path behind them. Everyone was running at full speed like a pair of scissors. The whole city was moving at top speed. If they were even a little slower, the danger behind them would all rush up. Chu! Lung Lingyan wanted to say something, but stopped. The words were at the tip of her tongue, but she swallowed them back. She wanted to ask Chu Hen to increase his speed again, but when she thought about the pressure he was bearing at the moment, she decided not to increase the difficulty. After all, it was not easy for a person to control true origin energy and Reiki energy at the same time. Especially in a race against time like this, it was even more of a challenge. Senior brother Chu Hen. However, at this moment, Li Xiu's anxious voice suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Speak, Senior Brother Shanjun. I sense Senior Brother Shanjun's aura. What? As soon as these words came out, everyone's heart skipped a beat, and a strong sense of pleasant surprise emerged. Where is he? Su Lang was the first to ask. Southwest, 5 kilometers away, but what? Li Xiu pursed her lips and said solemnly, there are a lot of blood trees around the area where Senior Single Brother is. The energy density there is very high. I think they must be trapped. After hearing these words, the joy in everyone's heart immediately turned in a great worry. What to do? Right now, they were also in a very urgent situation. If they went to rescue Dan Jun and the others, it was very likely that there would be unexpected serious consequences. Follow closely. I'm going to speed up. Without any hesitation, Chu Hen's determined voice rang in everyone's ears. Lung Lingyan's eyes trembled slightly. To be honest, she did not wish for Chu Hen to take this risk because Chu Hen was now the next sect leader of Mount Kunliu, the demon-slaying Hall Master. Wen Liang had clearly instructed them to protect Chu Hen's safety if they encountered any danger. Looking at Chu Hen's determined back, it was not broad, but it revealed an extremely convincing sharpness and domineering aura. Everyone, follow closely. I'll be in charge of the path of retreat, Lung Lingyan said. However, since Lung Lingyan had already said so, everyone no longer hesitated. Powerful auras erupted from their bodies and flashed like shadows swoosh. The wind whistled, and the rapid airflow continuously stimulated everyone's eardrums. The extreme speed caused everyone to be unable to see the scene in front of them clearly. The shadows of the trees on both sides swished behind them. In just a few blinks of an eye, everyone arrived at the area that Li Xiu had mentioned. What appeared before everyone was a huge bird's nest with closely arranged blood trees that soared into the sky. There were more than 300 zhang tall, layers of intertwining vines spread out and wrapped around the tree. There were 3 layers on the inside and 3 layers on the outside, binding the tree tightly. Looking at the bird's nest in front of them, Su Lang, Ling Tao, and the others could not help but swallow their saliva. They would not be able to break through this barrier even if they chopped at it for 3 days. Dan Jun is inside? Chu Hen made the final confirmation. Yes, Li Xiu affirmed. Swoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, a vast and mighty surge of Reiki energy gushed out of Chu Hen's body like a surging torrent. Under Chu Hen's control, streaks of golden light patterns and airwaves rapidly intertwined on the blue sky sword. In an instant, the blue sky sword shone brightly, displaying an extremely powerful and unparalleled sharpness. The forest was immediately filled with dazzling light beams. An extremely powerful sword aura caused even the heavens and earth to become restless. This sword was not purely made of Reiki energy. Instead, it was a combination of Reiki energy and true origin energy. Slash. Buzz. Buzz. It was done in one go, and its aura was astonishing. The blue sky sword was wrapped in a 100-meter-long sword shadow as it slashed down towards the blood tree bird's nest ahead. Boom. Bang. All sorts of intense explosions rang out. Under the astonished gazes of the people of Mount Kunliu Mountain, a huge hole that was more than 100 feet wide was constantly expanding, rapidly revealing itself. A terrifying energy wave spread out in all directions. The huge blood tree bird cage, that was like an iron wall, was forcefully blasted open, leaving a wide gap. Let's go. Chu Hen directly entered the bird's nest, and the others hurriedly followed. The internal structure of the bird's nest was constantly being battered by the blue sky sword's energy. The crisscrossing branches and vines wantonly swayed like venomous snakes. Chu Hen cut his way through all the obstacles without even turning his head. He knew that he did not need to worry about what would happen next. He believed that Lung Lingyan would be able to handle everything. Immediately after, a thick layer of golden light screen suddenly appeared inside the bird's nest. This light screen was one side of a sphere. The sphere was placed in the middle of the bird's nest like a huge egg. However, in reality, This sphere was a defensive barrier. In other words, the people inside were trapped here and could only temporarily protect their lives with the defensive barrier. Quickly, Junior's sister Xiao immediately activate the signal and inform senior brother Danjun to remove the defensive barrier. Su Lang hurriedly said. Li Xiao had a troubled expression. No, there's not enough time. When they remove the barrier, we'll all be trapped here. We can't let senior brother Chu Hen take this risk. The others were also in a difficult position. However, in the next second, Chu Hen had already rushed to the front of the defensive barrier. Since there's no time to remove it, I'll just destroy it. What? Everyone jumped in fright at Chu Hen's idea. No matter what, this barrier was a defensive barrier that had blocked the attacks of such a large number of blood trees. If they were to forcefully destroy it, it would be faster to just notify them to remove it. Boom! Without any explanation, Chu Hen's body surged with the energy of the stars. He stretched out his left hand, and the beautiful pattern of the Big Dipper floated on his palm. Among the 7 stars in the pattern, 4 of them were glowing brightly. An extremely restless energy gathered in his palm. It was as though Chu Hen was in control of the stars and could destroy mountains and rivers. Everyone's hearts trembled as their eyes shone with excitement. 4-star Soul Critical Strike. Bang! A loud bang that was comparable to an eruption of a mountain rang out. Chu Hen's palm directly pressed on the huge spherical defensive barrier. The terrifying impact caused the earth, rivers, and mountains to explode. Chapter 792. 4-star Soul Critical Strike. Bang! The violent impact shook the earth and exploded at a single point. It was only a split second of contact, but the solid defensive barrier was like a fragile eggshell, instantly shattering into pieces. It was so damn terrifying. The disciples of Mount Kunliu couldn't help but shrink their necks. This was the second time they saw Chu Hen use this move. At such a close distance, they could feel the fierceness of the destructive power. The powerful impact swept in all directions with an earth-shattering momentum. The surrounding blood trees and vines were instantly crushed as if they were washed away by a torrent. A huge hole was created in the cage that looked like a bird's nest. At the same time, under the impact of the violent shockwave, panicked figures quickly flashed out from within the defensive barrier. F***CK, what's going on? Retreat quickly. With a cursory glance, there were more than a dozen figures. Danjun, Qi Teng, Lu Qi, follow us and leave immediately. The familiar and resolute voice caused Na Xing's heart to tremble. Yes, Chu Hen. Ha! Qi Teng's coarse laughter sounded. Danjun, who had a face of astonishment, also quickly discovered Lung Lingyan's group behind Chu Hen. She immediately lifted her eyelids and shouted towards another group of people. Junior Marshal's sister Chenro, they're on our side. Follow us closely, okay? The other party responded quickly. Immediately, the dozen figures calmed themselves down and joined the team of Mount Kunliu, quickly leaving this place. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. From the beginning to the end, he didn't stop for even half a step, breaking through the blood tree cage and shattering the defensive barrier in one go. Chu Hen's speed didn't change at all. The decisiveness of his attack made the people behind him exclaim in surprise. Swish, swish, swish. The blue Ran sword merged with Reiki energy to open the way in front, and the others followed closely behind. They rushed out of the blood tree's encirclement in a race against time. However, compared to before, the team was almost twice as large. Everyone knew the current situation, so no one spoke first. Boom! Like a huge turbulence when a flood broke through a dam, a dazzling green sword pierced through the jungle. The edge of the lush jungle seemed to have been pierced through a huge hole. Following that, numerous young figures flew out one after another. When they left the blood-red forest behind them, it was as if they had stepped out of the gates of hell, and a great sense of relief surged. He was out. Xiao. The blue Ran sword drew an arc in the void, then turned around and steadily fell into Chu Hen's palm. Then, Chu Hen's figure moved. He flew down and landed on a stone platform in the area below. The others also landed by Chu Hen's side. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. They had finally made it out of the blood tree forest. Is everyone okay? Senior brother Shanjun, I've finally found you. Why are there only 3 of you? Where are the others? Chu Hen also looked at Shanjun inquiringly. The first group to search for the flying celestial temple master included Shanjun, Qi Teng, Lu Qi, Qin Shi, Shu Hua, Haozi, Mu Feng, and the Thousand Crane sect master, Qi Zhang. In comparison, these people's ability to survive in the blood tree forest was better than Shanjun's group. Shanjun shook his head helplessly. We got separated. Oh, where did you get separated? Before coming here, we were ambushed by the Fong clan. In the chaotic battle, the 3 of us ended up here, Shanjun sighed. She seemed very ashamed. The Fong clan? Chu Hen couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He was more or less surprised by this. The Fong clan and Mount Koen Lu did not have a huge grudge against each other. The only time they had a conflict was when they were fighting for the Heaven and Earth Black Yellow token at the Wind Soaring Origin. At that time, the Fong clan's expert and a man from the Heaven Serpent clan had joined forces to fight against Mount Kunliu's group. In the end, the man was killed by Chu Hen, and even his weapon, the Death Scythe, was taken away. Then, Haozi's arrival caused the man from the Heaven Serpent clan to flee resentfully. It was likely that the Fong clan harbored hatred for the man's death. It was not surprising that they would secretly attack the people from Mount Kunliu when they met in the ancient desolate Heaven Domain. Did you find the flying celestial temple master? Lung Lingyan asked. This was the most important matter at the moment. Shanjun still shook her head. We didn't find the flying celestial temple master. However, before we split up, Nongqi sensed his aura. What? Everyone's heart lit up. Shanjun continued to say, according to Nongqi, the flying celestial temple master's whereabouts are uncertain, and there's no pattern to his movements. Moreover, there's always another unfamiliar aura near the flying celestial temple master. Another aura? Everyone looked at each other. Sulang asked Liao Qixio. Liao Qixio, one of the leaders of the blood refining sect, had disappeared with Qi Hanyu. If there was someone else around the other party, it was most likely Liao Qixio. However, Shanjun's answer immediately denied everyone's guess. Nongqi definitely said, that person isn't Liao Qixio. Not Liao Qixio? Surprise surged into everyone's heart once again. What was going on? Could it be that the flying celestial temple master was entangled by a powerful enemy again? Where was Liao Qixio? The development of the matter seemed to be getting more and more confusing. Initially, they thought they would be able to find out about the flying celestial temple master once they found Shanjun. They did not expect things to become more and more chaotic. Speaking till here, Chu Hen could not help but sink into contemplation. The ancient desolate Heaven Domain was really too chaotic. They did not find the flying celestial temple master, and instead, Mu Feng, Haozi, and the others were separated. Moreover, the matter at Innocence Valley had always been on Chu Hen's mind. How was Yao now? Whether she was safe by Shintui Tian's side were all important matters that Chu Hen needed to solve. Just as everyone was silent, a petite young woman walked over. This should be Lung Lingyan, senior sister Lung, from the Void Palace, right? I've heard of your name for a long time. Now that I've met you today, you're indeed captivating. Everyone from Mount Kunliu was startled. Only then did they realize that Shanjun and the others were not the only ones who had been rescued. Following that, the young woman looked at Chu Hen and said, Senior brother, thank you for saving us just now. However, senior brother, are you Nangong Xian, senior brother Nangong from the demon-slaying palace? You don't seem to be the same as the rumors. Nangong Qian? Everyone from Mount Kunliu revealed disdainful expressions when they heard these 3 words. Without waiting for anyone to speak, Shanjun hurriedly introduced, Junior sister Chenro, you're mistaken. This is junior brother Chu Hen from our soaring celestial palace. Shanjun paused for a moment before she said to the people from Mount Kunliu, this is junior sister Chunro from the nation of Conquering Cloud. We met her in the Blood Tree Forest. At that time, we were attacked by the Blood Tree Vines, so we joined forces and formed a defensive barrier together the nation of conquering cloud. Everyone else did not think much of these 3 words. However, Chu Hen could not help but be stunned inwardly. This world was really small. Oh, so it's not senior brother Nangong. I'm sorry, Shenro apologized. Chu Hen smiled and replied calmly, "It's all right." One of the Mount Kunliu disciples asked curiously, "What are you people from the nation of conquering cloud doing here?" This. Shenro seemed to be troubled. "If it's difficult, then forget it. I'm just asking casually." "That's not it." Shenro was very lively, and her words were appropriate. She immediately replied, "Our mission is to retrieve our nation's treasure, the Heaven's Blade." So it was like that. Chu Hen started to have a headache. Heaven's Blade? Could it be the sacred blade used by the commander-in-chief of the nation of conquering clouds' 3 armies, General Bailey Qi? Shan Zhen's eyes lit up. Bailey Qi's name had been recorded in the history of the victorious East State. Anyone with a bit of knowledge would know of his deeds. Shenro confirmed, "That's right, it's that Heaven's Blade." "Then did you guys find it?" Shan Zhen asked again. "Not yet." Shenro pouted angrily. "When we rushed to the Demon Spirit Mountain Gorge, the Heaven's Blade was already gone. Later on, we met people from the Heaven Dynasty who were also going to retrieve the Draining God Spear. From them, we found out that the Heaven's Blade and Draining God Spear were both stolen by a bad boy. If I catch that bad boy, I'll definitely show him how powerful I am." The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener thought it. The Heaven's Blade and the Draining God Spear were both famous treasures on the Saint Weapon ranking. Whether it was the nation of conquering cloud or the Heaven Dynasty, they wouldn't let them go so easily. Chu Hen stood at the side silently. He did not know what to do in his heart. It was as if he was a thief, showing an indifferent expression. Shenro was also quite pretty and cute. A few disciples of Mount Kunliu also helped her scold the bad boy who stole the Heaven's Blade. Just as Chu Hen was gnashing his teeth in anger, Lung Lingyan said, "Let's not talk anymore. Let's think about what we should do next." This sentence pulled everyone back to the current situation. "Where are we?" "I don't know. It should be the center of the Blood Tree Forest." And everyone be careful. Everyone had seen the fearsomeness of the Blood Tree Forest. Now that they were in the center, it was most likely filled with danger. As far as the eye could see, the vast plains in front of them were filled with ancient stone platforms. The stone platforms weren't very regular. Some were cylindrical, some were square, and some were even rhombus-shaped. Almost every few hundred meters, there would be a stone platform. From afar, they looked like simple but majestic sculptures. "Let's go inside and take a look. Maybe Fu Qin, Haozi, and the others will be there," Danjin suggested. No one rejected this suggestion. After all, the hellish Blood Tree Forest was right behind them. Without Chu Hen leading the way, it would be very difficult to go back. "Everyone be careful," Lung Lingyan said softly. She looked at Chu Hen meaningfully. Beneath her calm eyes, there was a faint trace of anxiety. Whoosh! Soon after, Mount Kunliu and the nation of conquering clouds group headed deeper into the forest. Compared to the danger lurking in the Blood Tree Forest, the center was clearly much more peaceful. Ancient stone platforms rose and fell. Behind them, some of the stone platforms even had giant statues of ferocious beasts on them. These lifelike statues were the work of the gods. Every single one of them was extremely realistic, be it in terms of appearance or charm. Suddenly, dazzling pillars of light appeared in front of Chu Hen and the others. For pillars of light. One was scorching hot, one was as cold as frost, one was as black as ink, and one was as pure and holy as radiance. The 4 pillars of light stood on a huge platform that was as wide as a plaza. They pierced through the clouds and looked like they could hold up the heavens. Behind the 4 pillars of light was a giant door. The giant door was hundreds of meters tall. In the middle was the main door, and on the left and right were secondary doors. Chapter 793. Looking at the 4 pillars of light that pierced through the starry river, everyone's faces were a little moved. One was as hot as fire, one was as cold as frost, one was as black as ink, and one was as pure as light. However, the most eye-catching thing was the majestic gate behind the 4 pillars of light. The crystal pillar-like stone gate stood upright, as mysterious and imposing as a god. At the center of the stone gate, there were 3 imposing words. Immortal Prying Platform. This is? Chu Hen's eyes narrowed. Immortal Prying Platform? This was a rather unique name. Even though there was the word prying in it, it didn't sound like a thief at all. Instead, it was rather thought-provoking. At this moment, many people had already gathered on the vast immortal prying platform. There are also a few people standing guard on the surrounding stone platforms. Looks like we're not the first ones to arrive here. Lung Lingyan said faintly. Danjun began to search the crowd to see if there were any companions that got separated from them. In the past, when Danjun was at Mount Kunlu, he had almost 0 failure rate when he went out on a mission. He was able to complete it perfectly every time. However, the mission to find the flying immortal palace master this time was a huge blow to him. Therefore, Danjun desperately wanted to make up for it. But then again, for the current ancient desolate heaven domain, Shanjun's strength was limited to this. After all, there were all sorts of monstrous geniuses gathered here. How many people could remain undefeated in a battle between the strong? Just when Chu Hen was about to find a place to stop and understand the situation, a young man from the country of Yu Yun's group suddenly exclaimed, "Look, it's senior sister Yu Man. Where?" Shenro immediately asked. The 3rd stone platform on the left of the immortal prying platform. 1, 2, 3. It's really her. That's great. Shenro's eyes lit up. She turned around and said, Senior sister Lung, senior brother Shanjun, and senior brother Chu Hen, come with us. Danjun looked over in surprise, then asked with uncertainty, "You man? Could it be Sky Bamboo Peaks Lin Yu Man?" "That's right. It's her." Shenro was in high spirits. Her eyes were filled with joy. It could be seen that she admired and liked Lin Yuman very much. The name Lin Yuman was quite famous in the Eastern Victory region. Most importantly, the country of Conquering Cloud was backed by the so-called Sky Bamboo Peak. The Sky Bamboo Peak was one of the top 10 superpowers in the Eastern Victory State. That's great. I want to have the opportunity to get to know Lin Yuman. However, Danjun was just about to agree when Lung Lingyan refused. There's no need for that. Since you've met up with Sky Bamboo Peak's team, there's no need for us to stay together anymore. We still have other matters to attend to. So let's split up here. Lung Lingyan's decision surprised many people. But since she did this, she must have her reasons. Danjun didn't say anything more and just nodded at Shenro to express her apology. Shenro didn't seem to give up and continued. "Senior sister Lung, you've helped us so much. We haven't properly thanked you yet." "It's nothing. It's just along the way." Lung Lingyan insisted. As for Chu Hen, he didn't say anything. But seeing Lung Lingyan's determined look, Shenro could only bid farewell and leave. Soon after, Chu Hen and his team randomly found an empty stone platform and stopped. There are many experts hidden nearby. Chu Hen muttered to himself. He could vaguely sense that there were a few powerful and dangerous auras hidden in the surrounding area. Meanwhile, everyone was quietly observing the situation, their expressions and gazes filled with vigilance towards others. It seemed that there would be some unknown changes happening in this place. "Senior sister Lingyan, why don't we meet up with Sky Bamboo Peaks team?" A disciple from Mount Kunliu asked in confusion. Given the current situation, since Sky Bamboo Peaks team had arrived a long time ago, they would most likely know a thing or two about the situation here. They could obtain some useful information from them. After all, if they were to ask others, no one would be willing to answer them. Moreover, there were many experts gathered here. If they could form a temporary alliance with Sky Bamboo Peak, it might not be a bad thing. With Lung Lingyan's calm mind, it was impossible for her not to have thought of this. It's nothing. We just need to take care of ourselves. Our main goal is to find the flying immortal temple master. We don't care about anything else. Lung Lingyan's red lips parted slightly, and her tone was indifferent as she gave an unconvincing reason. The others could not help but look at Chu Hen. However, Chu Hen seemed to ignore this matter even more. He stood at the edge of the stone platform, his eyes fixed on the 4 pillars of light on the immortal prying platform. The 4 pillars of light were like divine rainbows, gathering the vast spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The majestic stone door at the back was even more majestic, and the 4 pillars of light were like a barrier guarding the stone door at the back. The space near the 4 pillars of light was extremely unstable, as if a terrifying destructive restriction would be triggered as long as someone approached. From the cautious expressions of the surrounding people, it was not difficult to tell that someone had suffered a loss not long ago. At this moment, a few agile sounds of wind breaking caught the attention of the people from Mount Kunliu. Then, more than 10 figures flashed over and landed on the same stone platform. Lingyan, aren't you going to greet an old friend? The indifferent voice had a hint of gentleness. The person who spoke was a woman with long hair and a snow-white dress. She was dignified, beautiful, and elegant. She was just like her name, Lin Yumin. Old friend? Senior sister Yumin. You've known senior sister Lingyan for a long time? Chenro, who was following behind Lin Yumin, had a surprised expression on her face. Not only Chenro, but the people from the nation of Conquering Cloud and Mount Kunliu were also shocked. Since Lin Yumin and Lung Lingyan knew each other, she should have gone over just now. Could it be that they were only friends in name? Their real relationship was not good? Yes. Lin Yumin smiled faintly and said, Lingyan and I used to be very good sisters. We played together since we were young, and even slept on the same bed. So, senior sister Lung is also from the nation of Conquering Cloud. Yes, that's right. Whoosh. The moment these words were spoken, both sides were in an uproar. Chenro was so shocked that her mouth was agape. She found this unbelievable. Lung Lingyan smiled helplessly. There's no need to tell everyone about our past. Miss Lung was one of the top geniuses in the nation of Conquering Cloud. Unfortunately, she lost to senior sister Yumin by a single move during the entrance examination to Heavenly Bamboo Peak. That was why she had no choice but to leave the nation of Conquering Cloud and join Mount Kunliu. A slightly ear-piercing voice caused the originally warm atmosphere to become a lot more awkward. The one who spoke was a young man, standing to the left of Lin Yumin. It had to be said that the men and women of Heavenly Bamboo Peak were all outstanding in terms of appearance and temperament. However, there was a hint of frivolity mixed in between his elegant brows. A single sentence revealed the reason behind this. Who would have thought that Lung Lingyan and Lin Yumin had such an old history? However, Lung Lingyan was extremely calm. Even her eyes did not waver. Instead, it was a hot-tempered disciple from Mount Kunliu who replied, unhappily. What do you mean by that? Could it be that our Mount Kunliu is inferior to your Heavenly Bamboo Peak? Haha. Junior brother, don't be so agitated. Whether it's inferior or not, it's not up to me to decide. However, I'm very happy that someone from our nation of Conquering Cloud has become the first disciple of Mount Kunliu's Void Temple Master. The people from Mount Kunliu were instantly enraged. A person who could not even enter Heavenly Bamboo Peak was able to become the chief disciple of Void Temple Master. Wasn't this clearly mocking Mount Kunliu for specially taking in the leftovers from Heavenly Bamboo Peak? Making such sarcastic remarks in front of so many people was really too much. Lung Lingyan was not angry. She smiled calmly and said, Yumin, don't tell me you came here just to expose me. Lin Yumin also looked at the young man beside her with a hint of anger. Senior brother Yunhee, please be quiet. The other party smiled faintly and restrained himself a little. The people from Mount Kunliu all had a bellyful of anger. However, because of Lung Lingyan, they could not vent their anger. Lingyan, long time no see. Let's have a good chat, Lin Yumin said. Next time, I still have an urgent mission. What mission? Can I be of any help? Lung Lingyan hesitated for a moment before she said, Have you seen our soaring celestial temple master, Chihan Yu? Oh, the soaring celestial temple master is missing? It can't be considered as missing. We just temporarily lost contact with her. Lin Yumin shook her head, indicating that there was nothing she could do. At this time, Yunhee turned to Chenro and said, By the way, junior sister Chenro, I forgot to ask you, did you retrieve the Heaven Karma Saber? The people from Heavenly Bamboo Peak also looked at her inquisitively. Chenro naturally shook her head. She told them about her encounter with the people from Heaven Unified Dynasty and how she learned from them that the Heaven Karma Saber had been taken away by a mysterious person. That person is really bold. He even dared to snatch the treasure that our heavenly bamboo peak bestowed to the nation of Conquering Cloud. I must make him regret his actions. Yunhee snorted coldly and said sternly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, an indifferent voice suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Chapter 794. I'm sorry, everyone. The TNI saber is in my hands. His indifferent voice was not loud at all, but it was especially deafening when it reached everyone's ears. The people of Sky Bamboo Peak, Mount Kunliu, and Country of Conquering Cloud were all shocked. Their gazes immediately fell on the young figure at the side. From the beginning to the end, Chu Hen had not said a word. Now that he opened his mouth, he became the focus. Chu Hen, are you joking? Dan Jun frowned, her eyes full of suspicion. Chu Hen spread out his hands and shrugged. Do I look like someone who likes to joke? The entire stone platform was in an uproar again. Chun Ro's group of people from Conquering Cloud looked at each other, while those from Mount Kunliu felt a little embarrassed. The person being called a thief was Chu Hen. This was 2F** king embarrassing. After a short moment of shock, Sky Bamboo Peak's Yunhee sneered. I was wondering why some people didn't dare to go over when they saw our people from Sky Bamboo Peak over there. It turns out that they have a guilty conscience. Interesting. The people from Mount Kunliu were so angry that their teeth itched. However, Chu Hen suddenly appeared and admitted it. Wasn't this clearly embarrassing them? Facing Yunhee's mockery, Chu Hen was not angry. He just laughed it off and glanced at Lung Ling Yan from the corner of his eye. He saw that the latter had a complicated expression on her face. She frowned slightly and remained silent. Chu Hen could basically confirm that Lung Ling Yan already knew that he was the one who took the TNI saber. And the reason why Lung Ling Yan did not look for Lin Yumin was also because of Chu Hen. Lung Ling Yan grew up in Country of Conquering Cloud, so she naturally knew about the TNI saber. During the battle with the Blood Refining Hall, Lung Ling Yan felt that the holy saber Chu Hen used was somewhat familiar. Then, she heard from Chun Ro that the TNI saber and the Dripping Spirit Spear had been snatched by an unknown bad boy. Lung Ling Yan confirmed that it was Chu Hen's doing. However, Chu Hen hadn't mentioned this before, and Lung Ling Yan had most likely guessed that he wasn't willing to return the TNI saber. Therefore, when she encountered Lin Yumin and the others from the Bamboo Peak, Lung Ling Yan chose to avoid any awkwardness. But who would have thought that at this time, Chu Hen would actually admit it himself? Looks like I have overestimated your Mount Kunli. Yunhee sneered frivolously. He then raised his right hand and smiled. Hand it over. However, Chu Hen remained indifferent as he stared at the other party's outstretched arm. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he said, I said that the TNI saber is with me, but I never said that I would return it to you. What? Shocking words. The group from Mount Kunliu Mountain looked at Chu Hen in astonishment. There was really no one else who could be this willful. What do you mean? Are you messing with us? Yunhee's voice lowered. I really didn't. Chu Hen raised his brows slightly and looked straight at the other party without any hesitation. In fact, I've been considering whether to return the TNI saber to the Country of Conquering Cloud. However, after seeing you, I changed my mind, resolute and domineering. Everyone was taken aback. Yunhee was instantly enraged. He could clearly see the deep disdain in Chu Hen's eyes. How could he tolerate such a disdainful look coming from a nobody? You're courting death. A chill surged from Yunhee's body. In the next instant, Su Lang, Ling Tao, and the rest of the disciples of Mount Kunlu all took out their blades and swords and guarded Chu Hen's two sides. Impudent. Try and touch him if you dare. Swords were drawn, and a fight could break out at any moment. The actions of Su Lang and the others stunned Danjun. She didn't ask any questions and hurriedly stepped forward to mediate. Everyone, don't be rash. Let's talk things out. Danjun was a person who cared about the bigger picture. Mount Kunliu and Sky Bamboo Peak would not be able to gain any advantage in a fight. Furthermore, there was the Country of Conquering Cloud nearby. so they had no advantage at all. Moreover, there were people from various factions hiding nearby. It was definitely not wise to fight now. Oomph. Yunyi stared coldly at Chu Hen and said, "If you don't hand over the Tianai saber today, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave. Come and take it if you can." Chu Hen was still calm and composed. "Who do you think you are? You think you're fit to be so arrogant in front of me? Even if Nangong Ku was here, he would still have to show me some respect." Before Chu Hen could reply, Su Lang, who was behind him, laughed coldly and shook his head disdainfully. "That's a pity. Nangong Ku has already been killed by Junior Chu Hen's spear." "What?" Rumble. The moment he said this, the group of people opposite him turned pale with fright, especially Danjun, who felt as if his mind had been struck by lightning. His face was filled with disbelief. Was this for real? Nangong Ku had been killed by a Chu Hen? The people from Mount Kunliu would not joke about something like this. Danjun could not help but look at Lung Lingyan. The latter's extremely calm expression had already explained everything. Shock. No wonder Lung Lingyan had been standing at the side without saying a word. How many days had they been away? Such a huge incident had already happened at Mount Kunliu. Quite a bit of astonishment also surged onto Lin Yuman's face from the heavenly bamboo peak. She couldn't help but pay more attention to Chu Hen's expression. You kill Nangong Ku?" Yunyi finally lost his composure and stared fixedly at Chu Hen. "Who exactly are you?" "He's a despicable and shameless person." Suddenly, along with a roar filled with murderous intent, a piercingly cold sword ray that spanned hundreds of meters suddenly whizzed towards them. The sword's momentum was like lightning, piercing through the sky. Everyone's heart skipped a beat as they scattered and retreated in different directions. Boom! The rainbow sword fell, and the entire stone platform was directly split into two. Rubble flew everywhere, and a huge chasm split open in the middle. The chasm extended all the way downwards, and a mighty shockwave spread out in all directions. The power of this sword was meant to take lives. The sudden attack immediately enraged the people of Mount Kunliu, country of conquering cloud, and sky bamboo peak. The people sitting on other nearby stone platforms also focused their attention on the scene. It's the people of Heaven Unified Dynasty. Oomph. Exengubrat, are you crazy? High up in the sky, a fierce young figure with an awe-inspiring aura stood. The man held a sword in his hand, and the inner energy around his body surged. His long hair and clothes fluttered restlessly, and his cold smile revealed traces of ruthlessness. Enemies really meet on a narrow road. The man ignored the curses of the people from Sky Bamboo Peak and pointed his sword at Chu Hen in front of him. "I told you to run away the other day, but today you've delivered yourself to me." Everyone could not help but be stunned. Chapter 795. Just as Chu Hen was about to clash with Sky Bamboo Peak's Yunhe, the Heaven Dynasty interfered on the immortal prying platform. The four pillars of light emitted a peerless aura. The people hiding on the surrounding stone platforms couldn't help but look over with interest. Spectators never complained about things getting bigger. In particular, the battles and confrontations between these major forces and sects were even more delightful to watch. Piercingly cold airwaves spread out in all directions. On a square stone platform to the left of the immortal prying platform stood a few figures with extraordinary auras. Junior sister by Nian, is that the person who took the draining spirit spear? The one who spoke was a handsome young man dressed in a jade robe. He emitted the aura of a noble. A young woman next to him subconsciously clenched her fists as panic appeared in her eyes. "Yes, senior brother Xiaomang. You seem a little nervous?" The man with the noble aura asked with an excited expression. Bai Nian gritted her teeth as the scene in the Demon Spirit Canyon surfaced in her mind. At that time, she and Xangu had launched a high-speed pursuit of Chu Hen, and in the end, they had almost lost their lives under the chaotic sword-flying ambush for some reason. Bai Nian felt an indescribable sense of fear when she saw Chu Hen. However, Bai Nian quickly regained her composure. How could it be? With senior brother Xiaomang here, we can definitely take back the draining spirit spear today. The young man smiled as he rubbed his chin and said meaningfully, "That's not necessarily true. Many extraordinary people came today." Whoosh! The cold wind howled in all directions. The Heaven Dynasty's Xiangu held a sharp sword in his hand and coldly looked at them. Traces of evil qi surged in his body. The people of Mount Kunliu secretly frowned. They hadn't even finished discussing the matter of the Tianai saber with Sky Bamboo Peak, and now the people from the Heaven Dynasty came looking for them. This trouble was getting bigger and bigger. "Senior Sister Ling Yan, what do we do now?" Su Lang asked Lung Ling Yan behind him. The latter slightly frowned and glanced at Lin Yumin from Sky Bamboo Peak. She was still calm and seemed to have no intention of getting involved. Adapt to the situation. As the chief disciple of the Void Temple Master, Lung Ling Yan's mind had always been calm and steady. Even in the previous battle with the Blood Refining Hall, she never panicked in the face of life and death. Based on the current situation, it was not to the point where they had to retreat. Dan Zhun, Qi Tung, and Lu Qi were stupefied. The three of them seemed to still be stunned by the shocking news of Chu Hen killing Nangong Qian with a single spear strike. Before this matter was cleared up, the Heavenly Bamboo Peak and Heaven Imperial Dynasty had come to cause trouble for Chu Hen. He could not keep up with the rhythm at all. However, in the face of the menacing Xiangu, Chu Hen was quite calm. "What advice do you have for me?" Chu Hen smiled indifferently. Xiangu sneered. Then his murderous intent rose. Without saying anything, he raised his sword and attacked Chu Hen. "I want your life." A clear murderous intent surged down like a cold current. Last time in the Demon Spirit Canyon, not only did Chu Hen escape from Xiangu's eyes, but he also toyed with the other party. Today, there was no need to waste time talking. Nine Heavens sword cry. Screech, accompanied by the cry of a crane that soared to the nine heavens. A monstrous wave of air spread out from Xian Chihuang's body. His sword was pointed at Chu Hen, and its momentum was like the wind. A layer of bright sword wave caused the space to fluctuate, and on both sides of the sword, a pair of white light wings rapidly unfolded from afar. It looked like a divine bird flying through the sky. Unstoppable. Today, your luck is not as good as last time. In an instant, the holy sword shrouded in light wings slashed through the sky like a divine blade, going straight for Chu Hen's body. However, Chu Hen's eyelids lifted slightly, and he unhurriedly stretched out his left arm. A dazzling starlight surged down. Bang! The surrounding space violently shook, and a circle of mighty Zhun Yuan qi dissipated vertically. Everyone's pupils trembled. They saw that Chu Hen had actually blocked Xiangu's sword with his bare hands. The holy sword, shrouded in light wings, steadily stopped about 10 centimeters away from Chu Hen's palm. The surging silver starlight was like an iron wall, making it difficult for the opponent's attack to advance even an inch. Xiangu was also shocked. What was going on? The last time they fought, Chu Hen's strength was far from this level. Buzz buzz. Not waiting for Xiangu to react, the silver starlight in the center of Chu Hen's palm rapidly rotated. Along with the slightly distorted space, a loud boom sound rang out, and a terrifying hidden force swept over like the undercurrent of the deep sea. Bang! The sword light wings that covered Xiangu's sword were directly shattered, and the powerful impact surged out with a crushing force. Xiangu's body trembled, and as the blood in his body churned, his entire arm was numb. Looks like you have to go back and practice more." Together with Chu Hen's frivolous tone, Xiangu's pupils shrank again. Bang! A heavy kick landed squarely on the opponent's chest. Light patterns splashed, and ripples spread out. Like a sandbag, Xiangu fell down. Boom! He smashed fiercely on the square of the Immortal's viewing platform, and the stone bricks cracked. The powerful impact dragged Xiangu's body all the way back, and a ravine 7 to 8 meters wide was rapidly dragged out. Just as Xiangu was about to hit the 4 light pillars at the back of the Immortal's viewing platform, the ground shook, and a circle of surging soft force spread out from Xiangu's body like a wave. Xiangu abruptly stopped in his tracks. Behind him, A young man who exuded the aura of nobility was pressing against Xiangu's back with one hand. Even though his movements were as light as a feather, it was still extremely powerful. Wah, it's Xiao Meng. When did he come? I don't know, but the people from Mount Kunliu are going to have fun. Xiao Meng's appearance could not help but cause a locomotion. Lin Yuman of Heavenly Bamboo Peak had a faint look of surprise in her eyes, and Yun He, who was beside her, also laughed coldly. Ha! Looks like we don't have to do anything. Someone will help us get back the Tianai saber. Hearing this, Chun Ro of Yu Yun, who was standing behind them, felt a little awkward. Even though it was true that Chu Hen had the Tianai saber, but previously in the Blood Tree Forest, they could only escape with their lives because of Chu Hen's help. Logically speaking, now that Mount Kunliu was in trouble, they should help. However, it was still a difficult situation. With Heavenly Bamboo Peak here, it was not up to Yu Yun to act on their own. Xiao, senior brother Xiao Meng, Xiangu, who had calmed his mind, had red eyes, filled with hatred and unwillingness. At the same time, Bai Nian and a few other experts from Tiantong Dynasty also landed behind Xiao Meng. You have already embarrassed yourself. Go down. Xiao Meng waved his hand and laughed with interest. Xiangu's face sank, and he gritted his teeth. Soon after, he suppressed the anger in his heart and stood behind Xiao Meng. Please forgive me for my poor eyesight, but which disciple of Mount Kunliu are you? I have never been able to tell. Xiao Meng looked at Chu Hen and said, Isn't that normal? I also don't know him. Chu Hen calmly replied, This is reasonable. Then, Xiao Meng raised his arm, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Return our things. Everyone simultaneously looked at Chu Hen. In front of this genius whose fame and cultivation were at the top of the victorious eastern state, what choice would Chu Hen make? Whoosh! A beam of white light flashed, and a strange spear immediately appeared in Chu Hen's hand. It had a rhombus-shaped spearhead, and the middle was connected to a spine. It was surrounded by a dark glow like a black flame. Chu Hen held the draining god spear and directly pointed it at Xiao Meng. Just when everyone thought that Chu Hen was going to admit defeat, a few clear and decisive words were spat out. If you have the ability, then come and take it. Why? Everyone was astonished. The people from Mount Kunliu secretly shook their heads. This was indeed very Chu Hen, but the trouble in front of them was getting bigger and bigger. The appearance of the draining god spear attracted everyone's attention. This is the draining god dragon's pine spear that is ranked 24th on the Saint Tool board. Its aura is indeed astonishing. This person doesn't know what's good for him, right? The draining god spear was originally the treasure of the heaven-ruling dynasty. Even if he obtained it, he can't take it for himself. You're wrong. All the sects have a rule that anything that comes from the ancient desolation heaven domain is ownerless. In other words, any treasure that comes from the ancient desolation heaven domain belongs to those who are capable. 1,000 years ago, it was true that the draining god spear belonged to the heaven-ruling dynasty, but now it has nothing to do with them. It is unreasonable for you to forcefully take it back. Everything in the ancient desolation heaven domain is ownerless. After 1,000 years, any treasure belongs to the strongest. This was an unwritten rule between the big sections. Therefore, Chu Hen had a reason to do this. If you have the ability, then come and take it. These few words were simple and domineering. Xiao Meng was still smiling nonchalantly. I have a problem. I like it when people bring things to me and not when I reach for them. Then I'm sorry. I'm too lazy to bring it over. Chu Hen was not afraid. Someone will ask you to bring it over. Xiao Meng's eyes slanted as he suddenly spoke. Sir Shadow Killer, I have a business deal here. Will you accept it? What? Shadow Killer? Hearing these two words, everyone's heart involuntarily trembled. They looked around as if they were looking for something in the crowd. Seeing everyone's frightened expression, Xiao Meng enjoyed it very much. He continued, Bring back the draining god spear, and you will be a consecrator of my heaven-ruling dynasty. If you take that person's head as well, my heaven-ruling dynasty will give you a land and grant you the title of Marquis, allowing you to control a piece of land. What a generous offer! What generous conditions! Before he finished speaking, an endless amount of dust suddenly floated in the air. The dust was like snowflakes, emitting a bone-chilling coldness. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sharp and rapid wind pierced everyone's eardrums. It was as if a ghost was moving in the air. A series of afterimages flashed by, and a figure emitting an endless amount of cold energy appeared in front of Xiao Meng. Chapter 796. I'm glad to be of service. The cold voice sounded like it came from the dark underworld. A sword-like chill swept through the entire place and pounced on the crowd. Looking at the cold figure that appeared next to Xiao Meng, most of the people present felt their heartstrings tremble. Many people subconsciously took a few steps back. It's really Ying Sha. I didn't expect him to come. The people at Mount Kunliu are going to be in trouble. Ying Sha, a name that was like a nightmare in the hearts of countless people in the Eastern Victory State. He was one of the top assassins in the province. This person's hands were stained with the blood of countless experts. Nobles, generals, ordinary civilians. The number of people who had died at his hands was innumerable. If the people of the world heard the name of Shadow Killer, they would tremble in fear. Anyone who was targeted by Ying Sha would not be at ease, even if they lived in the palace. No one expected Ying Sha to appear here. No one expected Xiao Meng to do something like this. He offered to assassinate someone on the spot. In fact, in the eyes of most of the people present, it would not be difficult for Xiao Meng to take down Chu Hen with his own strength. However, he did it to prove that the Heaven Dynasty was powerful. If they wanted to deal with someone, they did not even need to do anything. Only the top 10 super forces in the Eastern Victory State would be able to do so. The dignity of the Heaven Dynasty was not something anyone could challenge. Chu Hen, we have to be careful. Shanzhen's face was solemn. He said in a low voice, this person has assassinated a level 7 Earth profound realm powerhouse. We have to be careful. Assassinated a level 7 Earth profound realm powerhouse? The corner of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed. There was a hint of surprise in between his brows. He curiously looked at the person in front of him. The person was not tall and was very thin. His entire body was emitting a blade-like aura. This was definitely a very dangerous person. At the same time, the person suddenly raised his head. 2 rays of light shot out from his sunken eyes. Just one look was enough to send a signal of death. Can we begin? Ying Sha said lightly. Xiao Meng smiled proudly. He raised his hand slightly and said, let's wait and see. Buzz. Before his voice faded away, the dust floating in the air suddenly emitted waves of rhythmic movements. An invisible killing intent surged towards Chu Hen like wind blades. Everyone on Mount Kunliu was startled, and they immediately released their powerful auras, surrounding Chu Hen to protect him. How audacious. What do you take our Mount Kunliu for? That's right. A mere assassin thinks he can overturn the heavens? Even though Ying Sha's strength was terrifying, the people of Mount Kunliu were not afraid. Hey, what large force. Shadow Killer smiled frivolously, a hint of a sinister charm appearing at the corner of his mouth. However, you guys better keep your eyes open. Haha. However, Shadow Killer did not seem to have any intention of making a move immediately. This was also his usual style. He would first exert pressure, causing the target to fall into fear and panic, and then, when they were unprepared, he would complete the assassination. Once upon a time, the tens of thousands of guards in the Imperial Palace were nothing in front of Shadow Killer. Anyone who became his target would almost never fail. Stand down. Chu Hen's calm voice abruptly broke the tense atmosphere. Everyone on Mount Kunliu was startled, but they saw that there was no trace of panic on Ying Sha's face. Following that, Chu Hen's eyelids lifted slightly, and his deep gaze shot straight into Shadow Killer's emotionless eyes. Their gazes met, and like sword chi colliding, ripples appeared in the air. Buzz, buzz. Suddenly, a strange energy wave surged out from the depths of Chu Hen's eyes. Heaven and earth seemed to twist and turn, and the young figure kept growing taller until even his appearance became blurry. On that blurry face, there seemed to be a pair of demonic and cold purple eyes. Shadow Killer's heart trembled involuntarily. In that instant, he felt as if he was facing a fierce tiger, and the dangerous aura coming from Chu Hen's body became even more intense. What's going on? In a split second, Shadow Killer's consciousness flickered, and in the blink of an eye, he suddenly found that his palms were covered in cold sweat. Was that fear just now? As a trump card assassin, he actually felt fear in front of such a young man. This was really laughable. Not far away, Xiao Mang from the Heavens Orthodoxy dynasty narrowed his eyes, and he seemed to have noticed something strange about Shadow Killer. However, at this moment, a vast and violent aura suddenly surged over. Ha 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 ha! Let me help your Heavens Orthodoxy dynasty save some resources. Rumble. A thunderous sound accompanied by a piercingly cold wind rushed towards the immortal viewing platform. The expressions of everyone present changed slightly, and they saw three tall and mighty figures walking through the air. These three people were all more than 2 meters tall, and their clothes were strange. They wore bone jade ornaments. The exposed muscles were especially strong, as if they were made of bronze. It's the Fong clan. Dan Zhun frowned, and a cold glint flashed in her eyes. The violent aura of a fierce beast belonged to the fighting clan, the Fong clan. I am Xiao Mang, and I'm honored to meet the three of you. Under normal circumstances, not many people would be willing to deal with the Fong clan, a group of barbarians. However, what the other party said just now made Xiao Mang very interested. The leader of the Fong clan was the tallest and strongest man, and he was almost 2.5 meters tall. He turned his cold eyes and directly pointed at Chu Hen. This person killed our clansman. Whoosh! A surge of cold air stacked up, and the surrounding people all had a strange expression on their faces. This time, the group from Mount Kunliu had really fallen into a quagmire. Heaven's Orthodoxy dynasty, Shadow Killer, the Fong clan, and the Sky Bamboo Peak and the Nation of Conquering Cloud, who could declare their position at any time. Facing so many experts alone, the situation was extremely grim. It was dangerous. Dan Zhun, Su Lang, Ling Tao, and the other disciples of Mount Kunliu secretly thought of a countermeasure. Senior sister Ling Yin, junior brother Chu Hen, prepare to retreat. Su Lang said in a low voice. Lin Yuman of the Sky Bamboo Peak, Xiao Mang of the Heavens Orthodoxy dynasty, and Shadow Killer's cultivation base had reached the 6th level of the Earth Profound Realm. Among the 3 Fong clan experts who rushed over, the leader was probably not any weaker than them. Even if Lin Yuman temporarily did not make a move because of her old relationship with Lung Ling Yan, the others were not people they could resist. In the blink of an eye, the situation of Mount Kunliu had become so dangerous. I see. Xiao Mang smiled in understanding. In that case, please go first. Shadow Killer snorted coldly and said in a warning tone, His life is mine. Who dares to fight with me? The man from the Fong clan mocked disdainfully. I see that you've been standing here for a long time and don't dare to make a move. You should just stand aside obediently. You. Immediately, the man from the Fong clan ignored Shadow Killer and let out a low roar like that of a fierce beast. Crush his head. Understood, head shamanly, without any hesitation or nonsense. The style of the Fong clan was simple and violent. As soon as he finished speaking, the other 2 experts from the Fong clan rushed towards Chu Hen one after the other. Their fierce and ruthless aura was like a ferocious beast that had broken through the shackles of its cage, extremely threatening. Roar. Give me your life. They came in a menacing manner, and the smell of blood suddenly rose. The people from the various forces retreated one after another. On the heavenly bamboo peak side, Yin He smiled proudly and rubbed his chin playfully. This is getting more and more interesting. Senior Sister Yuman, what should we do? Shinro from the country of Yu Yun asked. Lin Yuman did not speak. Her eyes quietly stared at Lung Ling Yan, who was standing behind Chu Hen, as if she was thinking about something. The 2 experts from the Fong clan arrived in front of the people from Mount Kunliu in an instant. Both of them exploded with a powerful aura that was comparable to the 4th or 5th level of the Earth Profound Realm. Protect Chu? Before Su Lang could finish speaking, there was a swoosh sound. Chu Hen dashed out like a ray of light. The draining god spear in his hand was swallowing and spitting thick black light, and a piercingly cold spear aura erupted. Ha! You're courting death. The expert from the Fong clan who rushed at the front smiled sinisterly. The veins on his arms bulged, and then his palms rapidly enlarged, growing black fur and sharp claws. Swoosh. The sharp claws raised, leaving a trail of lightning in the air, and went straight for Chu Hen's head. At the same time, Chu Hen's eyes turned cold. When he was less than 3 meters away from his opponent, he threw out the draining god spear with one hand. The ice-cold spear fell straight down and flew out of Chu Hen's hand at an extremely fast speed. Hiss! A series of blood splattered everywhere. In an instant, the draining god spear directly pierced through the opponent's chest and flew out from the back of the expert from the Fong clan. So fast, the hearts of the surrounding people were all shocked. In the next second, Chu Hen directly swept past his opponent's left side and then flashed behind him, holding the draining god spear in his hand. A bloody hole the size of a fist appeared in the center of the Fong clan man's chest. But even so, his body only swayed a few times, and he did not die. While everyone was secretly marveling at the strength of the Fong clan man's body, the second expert from the Fong clan, who followed closely behind, had already launched an attack on Chu Hen. I'm going to tear you apart. Roar! Accompanied by a furious roar, the second Fong clan man's body quickly went berserk. Towering bloody light overflowed from his body, and his body rapidly enlarged. His violent aura was like that of a wolf and a tiger. Oomph. However, Chu Hen sneered, and then he leaped up and thrust the draining god spear forward. A violent gale arose, waves of energy surged, and the world seemed to be filled with the roar of a dragon. After that, a ferocious creature seemed to have awakened within the spear light. An enormous black scaled claw stretched out from the draining god spear, and it carried the might to split the sky as it smashed heavily against the enormous body of the Fong clan man. Bang! Chapter 797. Hiss! An incomparably ferocious black-scaled claw flew out from the tip of the draining god spear and struck the second Fong clan expert's sturdy body with the power to split the heavens. As the terrifying lethality fell, the Fong clan expert immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and the flesh in front of his body split open. In an instant, he had defeated 2 Fong clan experts in a row, and it all happened in the blink of an eye. The faces of everyone present were moved, and they revealed a look of astonishment. Chu Hen's strength was like a thunderbolt. Ha! You have some ability, but you still have to die today. The Fong clan expert, strength shaman, who was more than 5 meters tall and was the leader of the 3, smiled sinisterly. Following that, his body quickly turned berserk, and a violent aura soared into the sky. His body rapidly expanded, and his body was covered with black fur. His limbs turned into sharp claws, and he looked just like the legendary werewolf Heaven Unified Dynasty, Sky Bamboo Peak, Country of Conquering Cloud, and the ace assassin Ing Sha all retreated. The strength shaman's aura was as strong as Mount Tai, and a dense, evil aura surged. He extended his claws towards Chu Hen, and as the huge claws slashed downwards, a black shadow immediately shrouded Chu Hen. What an astonishing evil aura! The faces of the people from Mount Kunliu turned pale. This strength shaman's cultivation had already reached the 6th level of the Earth Profound Realm. For Chu Hen, it was somewhat troublesome. Roar! Immediately after, the draining god spear in Chu Hen's hand once again let out a resonant and high-pitched dragon cry. He sent out the draining god spear with all his might. A peerlessly domineering spear light, like a rainbow bridge, collided with the huge claw that extended over. Boom! The violent impact was like the collision of mountains. The earth shook and the sky darkened. Chaotic, quintessential essence, spear radiance, surged and exploded, accompanied by layers upon layers of whistling airwaves. Under the surprised gazes of the crowd, Strength Shaman's huge body actually trembled, and he took 2 steps back. And in comparison, the tiny Chu Hen was as firm as a rock, and he did not even take half a step back. This guy? Everyone was surprised once again, and they were all secretly astonished. Who exactly was this person? Since when did Mount Kuan Lu produce such a top genius? Who is this person? A disciple from Heavenly Bamboo Peak asked Shinro. I only know that his name is Chu Hen. Shinro answered truthfully. Chu Hen? The people of Heavenly Bamboo Peak thought to themselves, in recent years there hasn't been a young talent named Chu Hen in the victorious East State. It seems like he is indeed a rising star. Hold on. Shinro suddenly thought of something and turned to Lin Yuman, senior sister Yuman. When we broke out of the Blood Tree Forest, the weapon that person used seemed to be the blue ran sword. The blue ran sword. His uncertain tone made everyone from Heavenly Bamboo Peak look at each other. The blue azure sword was the symbol of the highest authority in Mount Kunliu. Could it be that this young man was the new sect master of Mount Kunliu? Amidst his surprise, Yunhee sneered and said, if that's the case, Mount Kunliu will suffer a great loss today. Not only will the new sect master die here, even the sect treasure will be lost. Boom! Bang! In the blink of an eye, Chu Hen and Li Wu exchanged 2 blows. The surging waves of qi came one after another, causing the space to tremble uneasily. However, the Liao clan, who were known for their violent strength, could not gain the slightest advantage in front of Chu Hen. Every time they collided head-on, Chu Hen did not retreat, but instead advanced. It seems like apart from being simple-minded, your limbs are not very developed. Chu Hen held the dripping god's spear diagonally. His eyes were as bright as the galaxy. Upon hearing this, Li Wu was instantly enraged. He clenched his fists tightly, and a majestic, raging aura surged out of his body. Don't be too happy yet, fool. Rumble, the ferocious aura that Li Wu emitted increased exponentially. Today, I'll show you the true power of the Liao bloodline. As soon as he finished speaking, he stomped his foot hard. The ground of the immortal prying platform beneath him immediately crumbled. Li Wu stood on the immortal prying platform like a giant guarding the mountains and rivers. Dense light patterns continuously surged out of his body. Every move he made was filled with power that could shake the heavens. At the same time, Chu Hen suddenly launched an attack. He leaped directly above his opponent's head and raised his left arm. Starlight shone brightly in his palm, releasing the radiant light of the sun. Looking at Chu Hen, who had initiated the attack, Li Wu smiled in disdain. A mere ant dares to compete with a giant? Scram! Buzz! Li Wu punched upward with a force that could break the heavens. All the spiritual energy in the world turned into a cyclone and gathered at the tip of his fist. Then, he punched toward Chu Hen. Chu Hen was fearless. He held the stars in his left hand and charged forward. In an instant, a dazzling white light screen appeared at the intersection of the 2 energies, and on the light screen was the pattern of the Big Dipper. Bang! A deafening sound shook the heavens and earth. Li Wu's punch, which was filled with surging energy, smashed onto the light screen with the Big Dipper image. The sky lost its color, and a shock wave soared into the sky. Even though Chu Hen was like an ant in front of Li Wu, he was as dazzling as the bright moon. Rumble. The space where the giant fist and the light screen met was distorted. Circles of light patterns continuously spread out. Subsequently, Li Wu's feet suddenly sank into the stone platform below him. Countless deep and dark cracks rapidly spread from his feet in all directions. What? Everyone frowned slightly. It was obvious that Li Wu was under immense pressure. They could not imagine how powerful Chu Hen's attack was. The starlight surrounding Chu Hen became even more dazzling. Li Wu's giant body began to sway. Even his knees began to bend slightly. Then, Li Wu's eyes turned red and shot out 2 beams of light. Scram! Rumble! The power of the sixth level of the Earth Profound Realm was released without reservation. Strength Sorcerer's body was like an erupting volcano. At the same time that the light screen between him and Chu Hen collapsed, a meteorite-like explosive force was also released onto the immortal prying platform below. Rubble burst apart, the earth exploded, and the heavenly stars exploded. The enormous immortal prying platform was immediately attacked by external forces. The entire stone platform square shook uneasily. The cracks on the ground were like vines that extended wantonly in all directions. Clang! Before Li Wu could attack Chu Hen again, Zhou Zhao's expression suddenly changed. Wind blew and clouds surged. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The four pillars of light behind the immortal prying platform shone brightly, without any warning, and emitted waves of intense rhythmic vibrations. What was going on? What was going on? The hearts of everyone present were all startled. Their attention immediately shifted from Chu Hen's body. The four pillars of light became more and more restless. They were like divine rays that connected heaven and earth. Thunderclouds crisscrossed in the sky. It was a majestic scene, giving off a feeling of divine punishment. After that, something even more shocking occurred. The southern sky gate behind the four pillars of light shook uneasily and started to sink at a speed visible to the naked eye. The people from the Heaven Unified Dynasty, Heavenly Bamboo Peak, Mount Kunliu, and the others couldn't help but clench their fists. Their expressions were solemn and cautious. Rumble! The storm came and the earth shook. The magnificent immortal prying platform had been riddled with holes since a long time ago, and it wasn't long before the three enormous doors had sunk into the ground. At the place where the southern sky gate disappeared, a black tunnel that was dozens of feet wide suddenly appeared. Buzz, buzz, chaotic spiraling air currents swirled around the black tunnel. From afar, it looked like a mysterious wormhole that appeared in the vast universe. Chapter 798. It's the secret realm of the immortal prying platform. Exclamations filled with excitement rang out, instantly causing a commotion among the surrounding crowd. Buzz, buzz, the nine heavens darkened, and the sky changed color. Incomparably chaotic, spiraling air currents rapidly revolved around the four pillars of light that supported the sky. The majestic southern sky gate sank into the ground. Looking at the black tunnel that appeared like a mysterious wormhole in the vast universe, everyone present felt an indescribable feeling as though they were in a dream. Clang! Thunder roared, and it was as if divine punishment was shrouding the area. At this moment, Chu Hen suddenly turned around, and his gaze met Lung Lingyan's. There was a deep meaning in his deep eyes. Lung Lingyan was startled at first, but then she frowned slightly and nodded seriously. Everyone from Mount Kunliu, listen up, Dan Zhun, Su Lang, and the others were shocked. In the next instant, Chu Hen was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. He turned into a stream of light and flew toward the black tunnel behind the four pillars. Follow, Chu Hen. Lung Lingyan did not say anything else, and she led the people behind her to follow Chu Hen. The sudden scene caused the people who came from various places to be surprised. But while they were surprised, they were not surprised. It was obvious that Chu Hen was doing this to escape the combined attacks of the Heaven's Unified Dynasty, the Liao clan, and the ace assassin, Ing Sha. You want to leave? Not so easy. The Liao clan strength shaman, who was closest to Chu Hen, was about to fly over to intercept him when a light and cool breeze suddenly attacked from behind. The air was moved, but there were no fluctuations in the strength of the energy. The strength shaman's eyes turned cold, and he turned around and raised his giant hand. Bang! A muffled explosion reverberated in the air, and a mighty wave of true essence spread out like ripples on the surface of water. Li Wu's huge body and the tall and lithe figure both took a few steps back. Senior Sister Lingyan, don't worry about me. You guys go first, Lung Lingyan said in a low voice. At the same time, Chu Hen had already arrived in front of the black passageway. Although the passageway was only a few hundred feet wide, it gave off a mysterious and boundless feeling. It was as if there was another unknown land of gods at the other end of the passageway. Without any hesitation, Chu Hen flew into it. Swish! Right at this moment, a strong and piercingly cold stream of air assaulted them. 3 blurry shadows were one step ahead of Chu Hen, leaping into the tunnel in front of him. What was that? Chu Hen was slightly startled. Who were those 3 people just now? There was no time to think. The Heaven Unified Dynasty, the Heavenly Bamboo Peak, the Yu Nation, and other forces had already arrived from all directions. Numerous swift and fierce figures were like a flock of swallows that had betrayed their nests, and all of them swarmed toward a single direction. Immediately, Chu Hen activated his quintessential essence defensive shield. Following that, his figure moved and led everyone from Mount Kunliu into the Black Passageway. Rumble, the aura of desolation that had been sealed for a long time, came rushing at him. The world spun, and the universe turned upside down. It was as if Chu Hen had sunk into a quagmire. A huge suction force was pulling him towards the depths of the area ahead. After roughly counting to 10 or so, Chu Hen directly fell out of a huge nebula vortex in the sky. Immediately, his eyes suddenly widened, and what appeared in front of him was an incomparably vast plain. Swish, swish, swish. At the same time, one figure after another flashed out of the nebula whirlpool behind Chu Hen, and followed Chu Hen as he moved forward without stopping. Junior brother Chu Hen, are you all right? The people from Mount Kunliu asked. Before Chu Hen could answer, several piercingly cold, murderous auras followed. You can't escape. Die. The strength shaman of the Liao clan roared angrily. The eyes of the other 2 Liao clan experts were also scarlet. It had to be said that the physical strength of the Liao clan members was truly terrifying. If it was an ordinary person, Chu Hen's previous 2 spear attacks would have been enough to take their lives. In just a short while, the 2 of them stood up again, exuding a vicious aura. At the same time, the Heaven Dynasty's Xiao Meng revealed a cold smile. Serene Shah, I hope that before we leave this place, you can hand over someone's head to me. I never do things that disappoint people. Ing Shah replied indifferently. A trace of a demonic smile bloomed on his face. Following that, a slight wave of energy was released from his body. Ing Shah's body actually became blurry and transparent at a speed visible to the naked eye. Following that, he smiled strangely at Chu Hen, who was in front of him. See you later. In the next second, Ing Shah actually disappeared from everyone's sight, as if he had become one with the air. Death was like the wind, following him like a shadow. Was it the invisibility technique? The people from the various forces all felt pity for Chu Hen. Being entangled by a ghost like Ing Shah, they really couldn't have a moment of peace. Not only was the other party invisible, even his aura was incomparably weak. Even if they were constantly on guard, it was absolutely impossible to guard against him. Being able to assassinate someone at the 7th level of the Earth Profound Realm is indeed not simple. It's better for us to stay away from the people of Mount Kunliu. Ing Shah had already started to make his move. The Liao clan was unwilling to let him go, and the Heaven Dynasty was eyeing them covetously. All kinds of dangers caused the hearts of the people of Mount Kunliu to become increasingly heavy. However, Chu Hen frivolously laughed coldly. I was wondering what kind of incredible ability it was. So it's just the invisibility technique. The moment these words came out, everyone was stunned. Chu Hen actually wasn't the least bit worried. Sky Bamboo Peak's Yun, he scornfully mocked. I don't even know where he gets his confidence from. At this kind of time, he can still laugh. Chu Hen ignored the ridiculing gazes of the people around him and said to Lung Lingyan and the others, be careful. Once things get chaotic, I won't be able to take care of everyone. Lung Lingyan, Shan Jun, and the others nodded solemnly. Immediately, Chu Hen increased his speed and secretly thought of a way to deal with it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The people from the various forces kept increasing their speed. No one wanted to be left behind. Mount Kunliu's group was the first to bear the brunt, followed by Heaven Dynasty, Sky Bamboo Peak, Country of Conquering Cloud, and the Liao clan. Although Chu Hen's current situation was escaping, Xiao Meng, Li Wu, and the others weren't chasing him with all their strength. After all, they had just entered this secret realm, and no one knew what the situation was like. Before they knew the situation, they wouldn't act rashly. Everyone understood that the ancient, desolate heaven domain wasn't a place to fool around. Of course, the most important point was that in Xiao Mang's eyes, Chu Hen was already a fish on the chopping block. There was no way he could escape. What's in front? An astonished voice immediately caused everyone's eyes to tremble. An ancient city stood in the middle of the vast region. Outside the city gate, a murderous aura filled the air. A strong stench of blood rushed over like a wave from the sea. This murderous aura actually originated from the many ancient stone statues guarding outside the city gate. The ancient stone statues were arranged in an orderly manner, and they were all the terracotta warriors and rattan armored soldiers at a glance. There were more than 10,000 of these rattan armored soldiers. Each of them was holding a spear, a sharp sword, and a machete. They were like the souls of an undead army guarding this city. Just when everyone was feeling strange, an incomparably loud bugle resounded through the sky. Following that, the ground trembled and the cold wind howled. The 3,000 rattan armored soldiers actually moved mechanically. Each of their eyes flashed with a strange red light, and an even stronger murderous aura swept in all directions. Kill! Shouts filled the sky. In an instant, the densely packed rattan armored soldiers charged toward the people in front of them like a swarm of locusts. F***CK. Can the stone statues still be revived? Strange things are happening. There are no strange things in this world. All strange things happen because you're too inexperienced. While everyone was discussing, they immediately erupted with powerful true origin energy to meet the terracotta warriors and rattan armored soldiers. After exchanging blows, everyone discovered that the strength of these rattan armored soldiers was very astonishing. Whether it was their offensive or defensive power, they were very strong. Bang! Chu Hen's spear pierced through the chest of one of the stone statues. Rubble flew everywhere, and a hole was blasted open, but the other party was still unharmed. Its movement and offensive power were not affected in the slightest. Then, Chu Hen blasted the other party's head with a punch, but it was still able to nimbly brandish the machete in its hand. Obviously, these terracotta warriors and rattan armored soldiers not only had amazing offensive power, but they also had immortal bodies. Apart from crushing them into pieces, there was really no way to stop them. Bang! Bang! The fierce battle was getting more and more chaotic. This was not what everyone had expected to encounter as soon as they entered. However, there was no other way. If they wanted to move forward, they had to break through this place. Wouldn't it be better for a group of inanimate objects to stay put? The Fong Clan's strength shaman's huge body was like a giant. With a punch and a kick, he could crush the rattan armored soldiers into pieces. The Heavenly Imperial Dynasty and Heavenly Bamboo Peakside were also peerless and unstoppable. Just at this moment, Chu Hen shot a glance from the corner of his eyes and suddenly discovered that there were 3 peculiar figures in a certain region in front of him. The energy waves emitted by these 3 people were not particularly strong, but they gave off a different feeling. It's them. Chapter 799. Rumble. In the secret realm of the immortal prying platform, the terracotta soldiers and the rattan armored soldiers were blocking the way outside the ancient city. The chaotic battle that broke out between both sides was extremely intense. It was comparable to a battle between 2 armies. Soaring killing intent filled the air and whistled. In the chaotic battle, colorful true origins splashed everywhere, causing the space to be in chaos. At a high platform near the city tower, there were 3 figures that did not seem to fit in with the chaotic battle on this side. The 3 figures were 2 men and a woman. The woman was in her early 20s and had a youthful air about her. The 2 men were middle-aged, about 40 years old. From afar, the 2 middle-aged men were guarding the young woman on both sides like guards. Both of them were looking straight ahead. Their eyes were as sharp as lightning, and their cold aura made people not dare to get close to them. From time to time, there would be a few Rot-Tan armored soldiers charging at them. However, before they could even get close, they would be smashed into pieces by the two middle-aged men's powerful palm energy. Who were these three people? A few miles away, Chu Hen was dealing with the attacks of the stone statues while secretly observing the movements of the three mysterious people. He was certain that these three people were the people who had entered the secret realm before Chu Hen. At this moment, Chu Hen noticed the young woman in the middle had actually sat down cross-legged. At the same time, her hands were quickly deducing a series of seals. Subsequently, a series of dazzling runes condensed and transformed from the tip of her fingers. At the same time, she said something to the two middle-aged men beside her. The two of them nodded repeatedly and responded in a low voice. Due to the distance, Chu Hen did not hear the conversation between the three people. However, the young woman's behavior made Chu Hen pay attention to it. It was obvious that these three people knew something about the secret realm of the Immortal Prime platform. They knew things that others did not know. If he kept an eye on them, he might be able to gain something. It's not a good thing to be lost in thought at this time. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind Chu Hen. The surrounding Mount Kuan Lu's group was startled. They saw the space behind Chu Hen faintly distort, and then an afterimage flashed out of thin air like a ghost, heading straight for Chu Hen's back. In his stealth state, Shadow Killer was simply too difficult to defend against. He approached them without making a sound. However, right when his opponent launched his attack, Chu Hen suddenly turned around and charged down with a cold and merciless counterattack. Bang! The powerful tip of the spear displayed the might of an army. It tore through the air like a flood dragon emerging from the sea and smashed into the phantom. Ripples of light surged high up in the sky as energy converged and exploded in all directions. How do you know that I'm not deliberately baiting you? Chu Hen sneered coldly. That blurry figure quickly retreated. Shan Jun, Su Lang, and a few other experts from Mount Kunliu hurriedly rushed over and surrounded it. You want to catch me? You're not qualified. Swish. With that, the afterimage once again turned transparent and quickly merged into the air. Shadow Killer's aura once again disappeared. Shameless thing, what's the use of hiding? Su Lang rebuked. Chu Hen raised his brows slightly and said indifferently, Ignore him. He can't do anything to me. The intense battle continued to heat up. Although these Rot-Tan soldiers and terracotta soldiers were lifeless objects, their advantage in numbers and their inability to feel pain still caused quite a bit of trouble. They had to be completely crushed, otherwise they would not die. Very soon, the miserable scene of the outsiders being surrounded and torn to pieces by the stone statues appeared. Blood rained down, and minced meat splattered everywhere. The scene was so bloody that it made one shudder. Chu Hen frowned slightly. He had to end the battle quickly. Humans would get tired, but the stone statues would not. The longer the battle dragged on, the lower the advantage they had. Swish! The sharp and ice-cold, dripping god spear pierced through the chest of a stone statue and came out from its back. Just as Chu Hen was preparing to add another hidden force and shatter it, the stone statue unexpectedly stopped moving. Moreover, its eyes that were suffused with red light also dimmed, and it immediately lost the danger it was in. What? Chu Hen was surprised. How'd he get rid of it with a single spear this time? Something fishy was going on. Chu Hen focused his attention and was surprised to find that there was a broken rune on the chest of the stone statue in front of him. The obscure and strange rune was like a pattern carved on it. If one did not look carefully, one would not notice it. And the place where the draining spirit spear had pierced through happened to be above that rune. Could it be? Chu Hen's heart immediately lit up. His figure moved, and he directly flashed to the front of another stone statue. His sharp eyes instantly discovered a rune that was approximately the size of a child's palm under the left rib of the stone statue Xing. The draining spirit spear moved gracefully and directly sank into the left rib of the stone statue. Even its stone-like body was penetrated, and the rune engraved on it was destroyed. In the next second, the stone statue immediately lost its vitality and fell straight from the sky. With a ping, sound. It was smashed into pieces. It really was so. Chu Hen, who had discovered the weakness of the stone statues, was secretly delighted. He turned to Lung Ling Yan, Shan Jun, and the rest of the people from Mount Kunliu and said in a low voice, "Listen to me." Everyone looked at him with puzzled eyes. "Find a rune on the stone statues. As long as we destroy that rune, we can kill them." With regards to Chu Hen's words, the people from Mount Kunli naturally did not have any doubts. Immediately, they no longer attacked randomly. Instead, they searched for the rune engraved on the stone statues and destroyed it. Just as Chu Hen said, once the rune was destroyed, the stone statue would lose its vitality and immediately become a piece of cold stone. In an instant, the people from Mount Kunliu became especially relaxed. With just one or two simple moves, he was able to deal with the stone statue's siege. Heaven Unified Dynasty, Sky Bamboo Peak, and the other powers also followed suit. Under a series of counterattacks, the number of stone statues quickly decreased, and they were all killed. With the pressure reduced, Chu Hen couldn't help but be curious about these runes that could control the movements of the stone statues. Immediately, every time he destroyed a stone statue, Chu Hen would carefully observe and remember the runes on it. But after a series of observations, Chu Hen was surprised to find that the rune patterns on the stone statues were all different. If one were to say that these stone statues were some kind of equipment on the same level, in that case, the runes that controlled their movements should not be too different. However, when a different rune pattern appeared in front of him, Chu Hen didn't know where to start. He was completely at a loss. The more he observed, the more perplexed Chu Hen became. After all, his attainments in the rune technique had reached a certain level. Even if he couldn't grasp many high-level rune techniques and couldn't set them up, he believed that it shouldn't be a problem for him to understand few of them. However, the runes that he came into contact with right now were extremely strange. Even if he arranged the runes on the dozens of stone statues, it was still very difficult to explain them. Chu Hen inwardly shook his head. The ancient desolate heaven domain was truly a strange place. Boom! Bang! All of a sudden, an earth-shattering shockwave swept out from the city in front of him. Along with the monstrous momentum, the majestic and tall city wall actually collapsed layer by layer. It was destroyed from the inside out as if it was being violently attacked by a landslide. Bang! Bang! Immediately after, the earth trembled. 4 giant stone statues trampled through the city gate and the tall city wall. The sky quickly darkened. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. Strong winds blew. The 4 giant stone statues were all hundreds of meters tall. They were covered in majestic stone armor. One was holding a giant sword, one was holding a halberd, one was carrying a giant blade, and one was holding a giant spear. The powerful and terrifying aura was like that of a giant demon god guarding this place. Feeling the terrifying aura emitted from their bodies, everyone's heart was filled with a strong sense of fear. "Those who offend me shall die." The deep and powerful voice was like a surging river, causing the blood of the crowd to boil. Immediately after, the 4 giant stone statues shook off the dust on their bodies. Like ancient demons that had just awakened, their eyes emitted a bloody glow as they charged towards the crowd. Slaughter, born for this. The giant holding the stone sword roared and slashed down with his sword, splitting the sky and earth. Boom! The ground split open, rocks flew everywhere, and a huge ravine appeared on the ground. An incomparably strong wind whistled past the 2 sides, and many people were sent flying away. Such a terrifying power! Everyone's faces turned pale. Immediately after, a halberd that was more than hundreds of meters long swept across the sky. A blurry afterimage pierced through the sky like a rainbow bridge. An incomparably long and narrow golden arc of light illuminated the world. Bang! Immediately, more than 10 human experts were caught off guard and were hit on the spot. Each of them spat out a mouthful of blood. One team to deal with one. Heaven Dynasty's Xiao Mang shouted and gave orders to the teams of the major forces. Xiao Mang was obviously referring to Heaven Dynasty, Heavenly Bamboo Peak, Liao Clan, and Mount Kunliu. These are the 4 strongest teams on the surface. As for the others, they were only responsible for support. However, Chu Hen smiled indifferently and turned to the people of Mount Kunliu. Let's retreat first. That's exactly what I mean. Shan Zhen understood tacitly. Bastard, what do you mean? Xiao Mang's eyes turned cold. Chu Hen disapproved and said, Just how stupid are you? All of you want to kill me. Why should I help you? You're retreating now? Don't tell me you want to reap the benefits? You're right. I'll wait until all of you are exhausted. Then I'll come and collect your heads. Chu Hen directly retorted and led the people of Mount Kunliu to the back. Without a doubt, everyone else was infuriated by Chu Hen's actions. They immediately felt that they had been cheated by Chu Hen. Publicly retreating at this time would obviously weaken the overall strength of the group. However, Chu Hen was very clear that other than his own team, no one else was trustworthy. Being on the same team as them was nothing more than being cannon fodder. At the same time, many people followed suit and retreated. Not many people were willing to die. Chapter 800. Boom! The city gate was broken, and the high walls collapsed. The 4 giant stone statues crushed the city wall like fiend gods, setting off an unstoppable momentum as they charged into the chaotic battle between the outsiders and the rattan armored soldiers. At this moment, Chu Hen's retreat had provoked the fury of heaven's unified dynasty Xiaomang. Looks like there's no need to let you live any longer. Ingsha, stop him. I'll take his life after I've dealt with these things. From the moment they entered the immortal prying platform's secret realm, Xiaomang was not in a hurry to take Chu Hen's life. Apart from the fact that he was not familiar with this place and had some misgivings, there was another reason, and that was to let Chu Hen and the others act as cannon fodder at a time like this. After all, the team from Mount Kunliu was quite powerful. In times of crisis, they could share some of the pressure. Once they were used, it would be time to take his life. However, Chu Hen had long seen through Xiaomang's tricks. How could he jump into the pit with his eyes wide open? The fierce battle in front of them broke out in an instant. With the addition of the 4 giant stone statues, the rattan-armored soldiers and the terracotta soldiers launched a fierce counterattack. All kinds of violent forces collided, causing the sky to change color and the clouds to surge. Chu Hen led the group of people from Mount Kunliu and retreated towards the back. At this moment, a bone-piercing cold current swept over, and a pitch-black fog directly pounced toward the crowd. Like a shadow, Chu Hen's eyes slanted, and he swung the draining god spear in his hand. A piercingly cold and narrow spear arc shot out horizontally, gracefully striking the fog. Boom! Along with a heavy explosion, a dazzling spear ray burst out, and a wisp of almost transparent fog rapidly retreated. Chu Hen thrust out his spear, and the 3-foot-long spear ray was like a lightning shadow. He directly flew out and chased after the fog. Break! In the blink of an eye, Chu Hen had leaped 2 miles away. His entire body was boosted up by his true energy, and the draining spirit spear, which was shrouded in black air waves, tore through the air and thrust down with the might of a thunderbolt. Bang! A violent vibration was generated as the spear solidly struck on the transparent misty figure. In an instant, the silhouette exploded like a ball of water, transforming into a myriad of specks of light that melted into the heavens and the earth. You fell into my trap. The cold voice, along with a strong, killing intent, entered Chu Hen's ears. I'm sorry to tell you that you'll be the 1089th profound world realm Wuxiu to die in my hands. Shadow Killer's tone was especially insufferably arrogant. Buzz buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, with Chu Hen as the center, the surrounding space formed a strange rhythm. A dreamlike distortion appeared in the trembling space, and in the next second, numerous crystal walls appeared out of thin air in all directions around Chu Hen. These crystal walls were so bright that they could reflect one's reflection, just like mirrors. Each mirror was tens of meters tall and more than 10 meters wide. In all directions, up, down, left, and right, countless ice crystal mirror walls formed a huge rhombus space body, directly trapping Chu Hen in the center. The crystal rhombus space body that hovered under the sky was like a strange palace suspended in the air. It was dazzling and radiant, but it also hid infinite killing intent. In the center, Chu-Hen's expression did not change much. He looked at the strange mirrors around him with a trace of surprise in his eyes. "Is it hidden in here?" Chu-Hen muttered to himself. Buzz. Then, a figure emerged from one of the ice crystal mirrors behind him. Chu-Hen turned around and saw Shadow Killer's figure, which was tens of meters tall, looking at Chu-Hen coldly. "I call this move Ice Mirror Demonic Palace." Buzz, as Shadow Killer spoke. One silhouette after another rapidly appeared on the other ice mirror walls. In an instant, countless Shadow Killers stared coldly and mockingly at Chu-Hen in the center, like the final judgment of the god of death. It was incomparably strange. Which one was the real one? Chu-Hen did not bat an eyelid. His gaze swept across the surroundings, and there seemed to be a purple gleam flashing in his deep eyes. However, if he broke one of the ice mirrors, he should be able to rush out. However, Shadow Killer did not give Chu-Hen any time to think. "Next, you will know what it means to be powerless." Every Shadow Killer hiding behind the ice mirror raised their arms, and a beam of light spun in their hands. The corner of Chu-Hen's eyes narrowed. Without saying a word, he turned into a shadow and rushed out, randomly choosing an ice mirror to attack. Fighting like a cornered beast. Before he finished speaking, the dozens of Shadow Killers in the ice mirrors all waved their arms, and dozens of light beams burst out, attacking Chu-Hen. Chu-Hen's pupils constricted. These light beams were moving extremely fast, and when he focused, he saw that they were all incomparably sharp crystal spears. Immediately, Chu-Hen's dripping god spear shook, and a series of spear lights shot out. Bang, bang, the two collided, and sparks and fire rained down. Explosions rang out incessantly, and surging waves of air spread out in all directions. Chu-Hen was slightly alarmed. The crystal spear's destructive power was not weak, and if he was hit, it would be a little troublesome. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Before Chu-Hen could come up with a countermeasure, wind and rain howled behind him, and nearly 100 crystal spears came flying at him. In a hurry, Chu-Hen hurriedly dodged to the side. But just as he flashed into the sky, the ice mirror above his head released a cold, killing intent, followed closely by a dense wave of crystal spears. The rhythm was too fast. Chu-Hen immediately put away the dripping god spear and summoned the blue Rand sword. Whoosh! A dazzling green light bloomed, and the blue Rand sword dragged out a dragon-like sword aura that lingered around Chu-Hen's body, transforming into a protective layer of sword chi. Boom! The crystal lances came one after another, like a torrential rain of pear blossoms. At the same time that the lances were shattered, the protective sword chi around Chu-Hen's body was also continuously attacked, causing it to distort and sway. Layers of ripples spread out, and before Chu-Hen could launch an attack, the area below was once again attacked by a rain of spears. The rhythm of the attacks was almost zero. Under such circumstances, Chu-Hen did not even have the time to gather his quintessential essence and release a powerful martial technique. Under the attack of the pear blossoms, Chu-Hen could only launch his defense at full speed, constantly transforming into a series of afterimages that moved back and forth in this ice mirror demonic palace. At this moment, the people from Mount Kunliu had solemn expressions. The ice mirror demonic palace was Shadow Killer's ultimate technique. He had once used this technique to kill 3 experts of the same level. The longer Chu-Hen stayed inside, the more dangerous it would be. "All of you stay here. I'll go help Chu-Hen," Lung Lingyan said in a low voice. She also knew the power of the ice mirror demonic palace. Too many people would instead cause serious casualties. Before Lung Lingyan could make a move, a powerful gust of wind whistled over. "You want to stay out of this? How naive." The sarcastic voice of the Fong clan's strength shaman came. The expressions of the people from Mount Kunliu changed. They saw the strength shaman rushing towards Mount Kunliu. Moreover, behind the strength shaman, there was a huge creature. Its majestic aura was comparable to a mountain pressing down on them. This was one of the 4 stone statues with a huge saber on its shoulder. What is this barbarian trying to do? Su Lang clenched his fists in anger. In the next instant, the stone statue was led by the strength shaman to the people from Mount Kunliu. The huge saber was raised, splitting the heavens and splitting the earth. Hee, this is for you. The strength shaman smiled proudly. His huge body suddenly shrunk rapidly. At the same time, he changed directions, and the huge saber of the stone statue behind him slashed towards the people from Mount Kunliu. Retreat. The people from Mount Kunliu retreated to the sides. The huge saber fell and split open a gorge on the ground. The soaring air waves rushed towards both sides, and many people felt their blood boil from the shock. This bastard! I didn't expect barbarians to be so cunning. The disciples from Mount Kunliu cursed angrily. However, the scarlet eyes of the stone statue had already revealed a cold glint. It was no longer possible for them to retreat now. At this moment, they could only brace themselves and face the attack. Senior Sister Lingyan, we'll deal with this stone statue. You go and help Chu Hen, Danjun said loudly. Lung Lingyan frowned slightly, and hesitation appeared on her pretty face. The strength of the stone statue was definitely not something that Danjun and the rest could deal with. If she left, Mount Kunliu would definitely suffer heavy casualties. However, before they left, the demon-slaying hall master had clearly told them that Chu Hen's safety was their top priority. After a moment of hesitation, Lung Lingyan finally retreated to the side of the people from Mount Kunliu and unleashed a vast amount of true origin energy to attack the stone statue. Senior Sister Lingyan, don't say any more. Chu Hen will be fine. Lung Lingyan was very clear that if it was up to Chu Hen, he would definitely let her do it. Boom! Bang! Inside the ice mirror demonic palace. The people who were trapped here could indeed be said to be trapped in the demonic palace. The crystal lances that flew over from all different angles were like 10,000 swords returning to their origin, torrential rain and pear blossoms. The endless flying lances that filled the sky were like the spatial turbulence that shuttled back and forth for thousands of years. Chu Hen, who was isolated and helpless, could be torn into pieces at any time. You've lasted longer than I expected, all the shadow killers said coldly. Whoosh! Whoosh! Chu Hen raised his speed to the limit. Wherever he went, there were traces of afterimages left in the air. Humph! Chu Hen sneered and said disdainfully, this technique of yours consumes a lot of true origin energy, right? Oh, you found a weakness? The shadow killer was slightly surprised. I can count to 60 at most. This technique of yours will collapse on its own. Chu Hen replied word by word. The shadow killer's eyes turned cold. Then he sneered, unfortunately, I won't wait until that time. As soon as he finished speaking, boom, a crisp sound rang out. All the ice mirror crystal walls suddenly shattered in an instant. The dazzling light shards were like shattered glass. The sky was filled with crystal fragments that danced in the air. It was dazzling and dazzling. It actually collapsed on its own. Chapter 801. Boom! The sky was filled with crystal fragments like an exploding star. Just as Chu Hen found the weakness of the Shadow Killer's ice mirror demonic palace, the opponent actually dispelled the technique. The brilliant light was dazzling and dazzling. Buzz! Quickly after, an extremely sharp, huge claw suddenly flew out. Like the hand of a demon god, it grabbed towards Chu Hen, who was in front of him, with a crushing force. Ha! Don't forget that there's still me. The cold laughter of the Fong Clan strength shaman was heard. Chu Hen's expression changed slightly. Then, he made a sword sign with one hand, and a sharp sword force spread out. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The jade ransword that revolved around Chu Hen's body transformed into over a dozen bright sword chi in the air. Immediately, they flew in front of Chu Hen and intertwined with each other, transforming into a sword rainbow that collided head-on with a huge wolf claw that was attacking him. Boom! The continuous sword shadows were like a rain of light that struck the giant claw. Space trembled, and the true essence patterns that wantonly splashed out were like flowers falling from the sky, dazzling the eyes of those who saw it. The strength shaman's mountain-like body trembled a few times. The surging power that covered his body kept surging, and the violent energy was like a tide. Do you still want to fight like a cornered beast? He. The chaotic battle caused the sky and earth to become incomparably gloomy. Chu Hen stood in front of the strength shaman's huge body. His deep eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness. He first looked at the location of the shadow killer. The latter once again used the invisibility technique and disappeared into the void. His aura was hidden like a ghost. Boom! Bang! The earth shook and the ground cracked. The battle between the outsiders from various forces and the Rot-Tan armored soldiers and the terracotta soldiers became more and more intense. It gradually entered a white-hot state. The 4 giant stone statues were shaped like awakened god guards. Their auras were monstrous and majestic like mountains. Heaven Unified Dynasty, Sky Bamboo Peak, Mount Kunliu, and 2 other experts from the Liao race led the others to surround and attack one of the 4 stone statues. Heaven Unified Dynasty, Sky Bamboo Peak, and Mount Kunliu. All kinds of messy and disorderly powers were released wantonly, turning the entire city upside down. Seeing that the group from Mount Kunliu, led by Lung Lingyan, seemed to be having a hard time dealing with the giant stone statues, Chu Hen frowned. He then shouted in a deep voice, "Look for the rune patterns on its body and attack." The fatal weakness of the terracotta soldiers and Rot-Tan armored soldiers were the runes engraved on their bodies. If their characteristics were the same, then that should be the case. Hey, you better take care of yourself. Buzz buzz. In the next instant, the strength sorcerer once again launched a ferocious attack on Chu Hen. His fists and claws were thrown out, and shadows danced in the air. The powerful impact of the attack was undulating, comparable to a storm. Chu Hen's expression turned grave. As he fought against the strength shaman, he extended his perception and was constantly on guard against Shadow Killer's sudden attacks. Chaotic battle of the heavens and earth, piercing rainbow. However, outside of this chaotic battle, there were 3 people who seemed to have nothing to do with it. At the top of a tower near the southern side of the city, 2 middle-aged men with cold temperaments and torch-like eyes stood on the left and right sides of a young woman. Once the terracotta soldiers and Rot-Tan armored soldiers approached, they would immediately be shattered by the 2 men's palm energy. The young woman, sitting in the middle, was not disturbed at all. Her hands were constantly deducing all kinds of strange runes and secret scrolls. Her slender eyebrows seemed to be in deep thought, as if she was calculating something. This is really strange. The woman pursed her red lips and softly muttered to herself. Then she opened her mouth and said, "Uncle Gang, Uncle Ko, I still need a bit more time. This technique is much more complicated than I imagined." The 2 middle-aged men nodded. The man on the left said, "Lady Lawn, don't be anxious. With your ability, there will definitely be no problem." The woman shook her head. "Uncle Ko, I'm mainly worried that someone will decipher this technique before me and get to it first. Then you can rest assured. In my opinion, those brats from the Heavenly Bamboo Peak still haven't discovered what's going on here. I think that by the time they react, we'll already have that thing." Hearing this, the young woman subconsciously turned her gaze towards the chaotic battlefield. Xiao Meng, Lin Yuman, and the other geniuses were like the bright moon in the sky, displaying their extraordinary demeanor. "It's really lively here." The young woman's eyes moved, and her voice slightly paused. Then she indifferently said, "It seems that Mount Kunliu will have to stay here." Boom! At the Heavenly Bamboo Peak, Lin Yuman and Yun, he led the experts from the country of Yu to attack the stone giant with the ancient halberd. This stone giant's attack power was abnormally fierce. The power of the halberd could split the heavens and split the earth. "It's about time." Lin Yuman floated in the air and clasped her slender fingers together. She looked up, and a chaotic flow of air circulated in all directions. "Bamboo Array Palace." Lin Yuman softly spat out a cold and low voice. "Chi-chi." In the next instant, The earth split open and jade-like green bamboos broke out of the ground, rapidly growing into the sky. Countless green bamboos formed a bamboo forest, directly surrounding the stone giant in the center. The extremely tough bamboos were like a cage, firmly clamping the stone giant's legs, body, and shoulders. Even the ancient halberd couldn't be moved. The majestic scene was especially powerful. Then, Lin Yuman's gaze swept towards Yunhe. The latter nodded and shouted, "Fire bamboo spear, buzz!" Yunhe spread out his arms, and a majestic, blazing wave of air rose behind him. Accompanied by the tsunami-like waves, the fiery rain that filled the sky was like a torrential downpour of pear blossoms. Amidst the majestic fiery rain, a huge sharpened bamboo was like a divine spear that flew from the heavens, traversing the vast sky with a shocking momentum. Boom! A heavy sound exploded on the stone giant's body. A beam of fire directly pierced through the stone giant's chest. It entered diagonally, penetrated through, and shook the heavens. Then, the experts of the heavenly bamboo peak and the country of Yin also unleashed their own attacks. Rays of light streaked across the sky and attacked from all directions. They were like a pack of ferocious tigers and wolves. Sword light rained down on the stone giant's body. Boom! In an instant, a multicolored berserk energy surged into the sky, intertwining and tearing at the stone giant in the center. Even though the other party was as solid as a boulder, as if it was made of copper, in an instant, it was riddled with thousands of holes, and its body was mutilated. At the same time, on the side of the Tiantong dynasty, Xiao Meng stood proudly under the sky with an outstanding demeanor. He looked at the stone giant in front of him with a judgmental attitude. "All of you, retreat." His voice was filled with arrogance and did not allow for a single doubt. Xianggu, Bai Nian, and the rest did not hesitate and quickly retreated. Rumble. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky as dark clouds surged. Xiao Meng stretched out one hand and coldly stared at the stone giant. His voice was like thunder as he shouted, "Flying peak." As soon as his voice fell, the dark clouds that had gathered in the sky parted, revealing the sun. A beam of intense light shone down. Swish! Accompanied by a piercingly cold wind, a 1,000-meter-wide mountain actually tore through the air and came flying over. The heavy flying peak was like a meteorite that had suddenly appeared. The heavens and earth darkened and the space trembled. It pierced through the clouds and smashed towards the stone giant. Ha! The stone giant let out a low roar. It raised the sword in its hands and fiercely swung it at the mountain. Bang! It was earth-shattering and sparks flew everywhere. As the earth shook and the mountain swayed, the stone giant was directly forced back by the incomparably fierce impact. Even the sword in its hands was almost sent flying. Bang! At the same time, Feline Mountain landed heavily on the ground. Then, the mountain rapidly split open from the middle, and dazzling golden pillars of light blossomed from the crack. The majestic and beautiful scene was like the unearthing of a treasure. From within the mountain peak that was constantly splitting open, an exquisite and gorgeous battle axe slowly rose up. The battle axe was about 1 meter long and half a meter wide. It was not very heavy, but it was incomparably exquisite. The patterns carved on it shone with a golden light and emitted intense energy waves, Saint's slicing axe. The people nearby all revealed looks of admiration. Swish! Soon after, Xiao Meng's figure moved. With a wave of his hand, the battle axe flew out and landed firmly in his palm. Buzz, buzz! An endless stream of energy quickly gathered inside the Saint's slicing axe. A thick layer of golden light enveloped its surroundings and rotated. At this moment, even the space around Xiao Meng faintly trembled, emitting a series of uneasy rhythms. One axe to split the heavens destroy. Xiao Meng shouted loudly and chopped down with a single hand. Swish! In an instant, a divine rainbow-like golden axe shadow traversed the heavens and earth. It was like a stream of light that could trace back thousands of years as it vertically chopped towards the stone giant below. The incomparably sharp sound of the wind tearing apart everyone's eardrums. Everyone only saw a shocking rainbow flash past their eyes. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the golden axe shadow pierced through the center of the stone giant, splitting the mountains and splitting the earth. The stone giant was forcefully split into two halves. What a terrifying power! Many people were shocked by Xiao Mang's strength and secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. Hee, you should be panicking now. Li Wu coldly looked at Chu Hen and sneered. At the same time, Mount Kunliu was also in a state of emergency. The Heaven Unified Dynasty had taken the lead in getting rid of the stone giant. Without a doubt, it had put an even greater pressure on Chu Hen. Still haven't found the location of the pattern? I haven't found it. What should we do? Senior Sister Ling Yan. After a round of inspection, there didn't seem to be any fatal patterns on the stone giant like the terracotta soldiers and wrought 10 armored soldiers. Chapter 802. Use the demon hunting tactic. Seeing that the Heavenly Imperial Dynasty and the Heavenly Bamboo Peak had dealt with the stone giants, the pressure on Mount Kunliu's side immediately increased. Lung Lingyan's eyes flashed with determination, and she immediately gave the order. Shan Jun, Su Lang, and the others from Mount Kunliu were shocked. A solemn expression appeared on their faces. Senior Sister Lingyan, you? Listen to me. Lung Lingyan's tone left no room for hesitation. The demon hunting tactic was an extremely effective and fast-paced team tactic. It was very effective against powerful opponents. However, its biggest flaw was that the person in charge of the attack was very dangerous. However, Lung Lingyan's attitude had already shown her determination. Understand. Shan Jun's eyes emitted 2 rays of brilliance. Soon after, his body moved, and a pair of gorgeous golden wings appeared on both sides of his body. Su Lang, Ling Tao, the 2 of you are responsible for the left and right wings. Understood. The 2 of them replied in unison. Swoosh. As soon as they finished speaking, Su Lang and Ling Tao raised their hands and swung out a thick and heavy diamond chain. The iron chains were like aquatic dragons dancing in the air. They quickly shot out and wrapped around the stone statue giant's legs from both sides. The stone giant's strength was as great as a thunderbolt. It leaped into the air like Mount Tai. Both Su Lang and Ling Tao were directly pulled into the air, flying away from where they stood. However, they did not panic at all. They were familiar with this tactic. They did not even need to exchange glances as they grabbed the infinitely long chain and circled around the stone giant's legs. The 2 chains immediately intertwined and formed a huge shackle that shackled the stone giant's legs. The stone giant roared and swung the huge saber in its hand to the 2 of them. The sky changed color as the surging saber aura shook the surroundings. However, at this moment, the flowing light wings that Shan Jun had transformed into charged forward like a beam of light. Screech! When she was less than 20 meters away from the stone giant's head, Shan Jun also threw out a diamond chain. The speed of the chain was extremely fast. It tore through the air and wrapped around the stone giant's neck twice at lightning speed. Beautiful! A disciple of Mount Kunliu could not help but shout. Danjin's gaze was as sharp as an eagle's. Once she hit the target, she immediately sped up. She drew a blurry afterimage in the air and quickly circled to the back of the giant stone statue's head. Following that, Danjun grabbed one end of the iron chain tightly with both hands, and all the true inner force in his body surged out like a raging tide. Danjun roared, the veins on her arms bulging. She used all her strength to drag the chain that was wrapped around the head of the stone statue downward, overthrowing 1,000 caddies with little effort. The giant stone statue immediately lost its balance. Its body tilted backwards, and with its legs shackled, its movements were restricted. The giant stone statue was forcefully dragged to the ground by Danjun. Boom! The earth quaked, and the mountains swayed. A loud rumble reverberated through the ground as cracks began to spread. Perfect! Danjun clenched her fists in excitement. Senior Sister Ling Yan, I've waited for a long time. Lung Ling Yan, who had been waiting for a long time, flew high into the sky. At the same time, the rich spiritual power of heaven and earth quickly converged into her body. In an instant, Lung Lingyan felt as if she was in the middle of a storm. Violent energy waves surrounded her from all directions. Swish! In the next second, Lung Lingyan's palm descended like a star falling from the nine heavens. It swept up an irresistible, majestic force and struck the center of the chest of the giant stone statue. Void destruction palm. Bang! The earth trembled as a surging and mighty palm force swept out in all directions. Sand flew into the air, and a layer of soil cracked. The giant stone statue's huge body trembled, and the ferocious palm force quickly spread throughout its entire body. Under the astonished gazes of the surrounding people, the giant stone statue's body split open into countless densely packed cracks, as if it was a piece of porcelain that had been frozen and shattered after hitting its target. Lung Lingyan immediately turned into a rebounding force and bounced back. Meanwhile, the rest of the people from Mount Kunliu did not hesitate at all. They continuously unleashed powerful attacks. More than 10 resplendent pillars of light attacked the giant stone statue lying on the ground at the same time. Bang! Furious energy waves converged and exploded, sweeping through the earth like a storm. Rocks flew everywhere, and in an instant, the giant stone statue was torn to pieces. Success! The strength displayed by Mount Kunliu caused shock to rise in the hearts of the people from all walks of life. Even the heavenly bamboo peaks people from the Heaven Unified Dynasty looked at them with deep gazes. That Lung Lingyan really has some skills, Chinro from the country of Yiyun said in a low voice. Lin Yuman, who was at the side, smiled indifferently. Since young, she has never lost to me. Yun he coldly ridiculed. But you entered the heavenly bamboo peak, and she can only go to Mount Kunliu? Bang! 3 of the 4 giant stone statues were killed one after another, and the last giant stone statue wielding a long spear was also forced to retreat under the encirclement of many experts. The combined attack of dozens of people directly sent the giant stone statue flying, and it heavily smashed into the ruins of the city. Following that, the giant stone statue stood up, and its glowing red eyes shot toward the observation platform closest to it. On that high platform, 2 middle-aged men with extraordinary appearances were standing guard beside a young and beautiful figure. From the beginning, these 3 people seemed to be uninvolved, turning a blind eye to the chaotic battle in front of them. The giant stone statue, which had climbed back up, actually waved its huge spear and swept it toward the 3 people on the observation platform. The young woman sitting in the middle acted as if she did not hear it. Meanwhile, the 2 middle-aged men beside her also revealed expressions. The eyes of the one on the left turned cold, and along with a chi-chi, sound of restlessness, a silver lightning pattern was suddenly released from his body, rushing thunder palm. Clang! A deafening sound of thunder resounded in the air. That person barehandedly struck out a palm full of lightning to meet the giant stone statue's long spear. The heaven and earth shook, and the aura soared to the sky. The giant stone statue, which was comparable to a mountain, was actually forcibly repelled. As for that middle-aged man, he stood in the same place like a boulder, unwavering. Everyone present was visibly moved by his words. Without waiting for the people to recover from the shock, that middle-aged man soared into the sky, and the air around him churned, abnormally surging. The sky above the 9 heavens was instantly filled with thunderclouds, and the biting cold wind stirred the sky. Following that, the middle-aged man raised one hand to the sky, and his 5 fingers closed as he reached toward the giant stone statue. Rumble! In an instant, a lightning beam with a diameter of more than 100 meters descended from the sky, like a divine punishment from the heavens. It set off an endless destructive force that struck the giant stone statue. Heavenly lightning bringer. Bang! A dazzling light completely exploded, and a terrifying force poured down. Along with a huge pit on the ground, Under everyone's shocked gazes, that giant stone statue was directly smashed into pieces by that lightning bolt. Bang! Hiss! This scene caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. Even Heaven Dynasty's Xiao Mang, Heavenly Bamboo Peak's Lin Yuman, and the others revealed a somewhat serious expression. It's the people from that place. Yunhe narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice. Even they came. It seems that there must be an unknown secret here. Heaven Dynasty's Xian Gu solemnly said. What should we do? Senior brother Xiao Mang? Ban Yin softly asked. Xiao Mang's cold eyes flashed with a faint coldness. His gaze swept past the three people, and then returned to Chu Hen, who was fighting with the Fong clan strength shaman. Ignore them first. I'll go and twist that stinking brat's head off first. Swish.